Welcome to Thoughts of the Fog 1980. Probably not going to do the 2005 remake film. This contains spoilers, and let's see. I did not have to pay to watch this. I didn't get it illegally, though. Don't worry. And so anything negative I say in this is not out of bitterness. I believe I first watched this in 2008. I'm not sure I've watched it since then. If I have, I couldn't tell you. If I have, I'd say at most twice. I, I do love it, but I've only more recently started actually intentionally rewatching stuff. Now, and yeah, before watching it right before starting to vlog now, for those who don't know that's how I do these. Now, my opinion of this did not change due to the crappy remake. My version of this may be partially censored, so if I say something about gore, violence, sex, or nudity in this video that doesn't make sense to you, it's because we watched two different versions of the movie. I chose to watch the one which was more easily available and or less expensive. So, let's see. Yes. Now, my own quote-unquote film critic rating for this, yeah, a 7 out of 10. But my personal rating is a 9 out of 10, I would have to say. Now, before I jump into the notes, when I do these videos, you know, some of the stuff that I have to set up to, the lights and camera and such, it leads to me having to stack some empty boxes afterwards. Most of the time, they basically stay where they are. But before I hit record, not once but twice, some of them started sliding. It's not gonna do, I'm not an idiot. None of it is stacked in a way that could, nothing's gonna break. It's not gonna, but they slid just a tiny bit, and in a way that made noise that attracted my attention to it. And it's like, I know that this is just a movie. I know that the fog isn't real. And it's like, it's super bright. It's just shy of noon. It's a bright, sunny day. But for a fraction of a second, my lizard brain is like, the zombie pirates are here. I love horror movies. And I forgot to start the timer. So I will just spend a few seconds making sure I have the right time. Let's see. So it was, yes. So that means, I guess 4 minutes is appropriate. Let's see, and there we go. Oh, there it is. Okay, and that brings us to the notes taken while watching. And yeah, for those new to my videos, these are all, yeah, with almost no exception, these are chronological. This is stuff I noted as I was watching the movie. So if I start to make a point, and there are maybe more examples for that point, and I don't bring them up there, it's not that I didn't realize they were there. It's just you know, it's been at least a few years. If I watched it more than once, it's been maybe 5 years or something since I last watched it. Maybe only 3. So I don't remember all the instances of the different occurrences. Yes. The opening notes of the soundtrack already give me chills. I love John Carpenter, especially like 70s and 80s John Carpenter. I'm not saying that there's nothing bad, that he didn't make a single mistake. I'm just saying that the things he did right so greatly outweigh the mistakes that he made. I'm not going to make excuses for like the stuff he did in the 90s and 2000s and in 2010. I honestly, I kind of hope that he just like helps out with guiding new filmmakers, especially of franchises. I thought the I absolutely loved the 2018 Halloween movie, and as far as I understand, basically his involvement in it was that he made a new version of the classic theme. I think he worked with his son to make that, or something like that. But he read the script and he was like, they get it. And he was excited to work on it when, a lot of the stuff he's made has not been treated particularly, the Halloween sequels are mostly not very, yeah, just briefly to, I think that the way I see it, there's the 1978 one and the 2018 one. Everything else is best ignored. And yeah, so but yeah, it, him, like, maybe if he has like input on scripts or something, I think that would be good. But he probably, I mean, based on the last several movies he's directed, his heart is not really in it anymore. He's making very weird mistakes, and yeah, just, it's like with a lot of art, you can, yeah, creative expression. Some people don't think that movies like this can be art. With a lot of creative expression, you can tell if their heart is not in it, especially if you've seen stuff they were clearly passionate about. I love the ghost story. Back to the notes here. I'm not sure I've seen any other movie that so perfectly encapsulates being told a ghost story around a campfire. So it really is perfect to open the movie with exactly that. Like, everybody know, like, I'm not 100% certain I've actually experienced it in real life. I'm not sure that's really something we do here, or maybe just didn't when I was a kid. But I mean, everybody, like, cultural osmosis at the very least, everybody knows that there is such a thing as sitting around a campfire and, one of, yeah, and someone tells a ghost story. And the like, it is especially, what's the word, like the it's, yeah, it's especially something that sounds like it might happen to you, basically. And in this case, it straight up is, he's talking about the town that they're living in, and it's, yeah, it's past. And it really is. I'm really glad that, like, apparently originally that scene was not supposed to be there. It was like they they were finishing up the movie, and John Carpenter realized that it was coming up too short. I forget if it's too short for feature or too short for TV. I think too short for TV. That was Halloween, wasn't it? And then he went back and did scenes that tied into Halloween 2. I think this one, it was simply too short for feature length, for getting into theaters. So he decided that that would be a good scene to add, because it adds, like, what is it, 2.5 minutes or something. It is so perfect that the movie opens like this. It's like John Carpenter, like, it seems like he's already making so many. He's almost every decision he makes is so great, but then occasionally they'll be like, well, I guess it would be okay if, like, this or that was added. okay, sure, I'll go, hash this out, and it's one of the best parts of the movie. It's ridiculous. Like the apparently, the I believe the next John Carpenter movie I'm reviewing is Big Trouble in Little China. And this is, don't worry, it's not that I'm not gonna review some of the films he made in between these two, between 1980 and 1986. It's simply that they're, wait a second, come to think of it, I guess some of the others are late 80s also. Anyway, there are other John Carpenter movies that I will be reviewing. It's just that, these are two of the ones that I only have on VHS. My VCR is eventually going to give out. I'm dealing with the VHS ones first. But yeah, like for that one, it's like, well, the yeah, like the producers or something were like, uh, it's not clear enough that Jack Burton is supposedly the hero of the story, and so Carpenter added the brief opening, which I'm not going to talk about it in detail here for those who haven't seen it, but that's like, I mean, it's a great scene. So like, yeah, just yeah, yeah, just a brief, like, I acknowledge that he did make some mistakes. He did write Halloween 2, and I grant him a lot of leeway for, they basically he basically had to do that. It is still like, and he's admitted it since. It's a bad script. The Yeah. Now, I forgot to zoom, excuse me, or it's really going to strain my eyes to read these notes in the long run. And there it is. You had it in you. And there. I guess, yeah, I think that was what I, yeah, and apparently another thing he went back and added to this was like some of the gore and violence, when it was largely, there was almost no gore and violence when, he initially he finished the like first version, and it was supposed to be, okay, now we're done with making the movie, but he was like, yes, there's needs a little bit more. And yeah, I think the gore and violence, he just, it's the exact right amount. Like, it's unreal how good he is at it. He understands how little violence a movie like the original Halloween needed, whilst also I haven't heard him complain about there being too much violence in the 2018 one, because just people's expectations are different. You can't do exactly the same thing, which I think is one of the things with like Halloween H2O. It maybe just doesn't quite go far enough. Anyway, the yeah, and then a movie like The Thing, which I guess I shouldn't, yeah, I don't want to give that away for people who haven't watched The Thing, but just with each of these movies, he made the exact right choice. There's exactly as much or as little gore and violence as there should be. But yeah, just briefly, if I had to, like, my absolute favorites of his are The Thing and Halloween. I yeah, they share my top spot for favorite movie, and the very least favorite horror movie and favorite John Carpenter movie. Also absolutely love They Live, Prince of Darkness, The Fog. I have to admit, I don't remember that much of Big Trouble in Little China, but I do remember really loving it. Anyway, back to the notes. The actor does a great job telling the ghost story. And, it's a great, like, he says, let's, a story to warm us up. And it's like, I don't think that story warmed them up. I'm pretty sure you gave them chills and nightmares instead. Father, can I get paid? Maybe just come in at 7 in the morning. Yeah, just, I think that's a no. very effective jump scare as the one stone falls out to reveal the journal, and a couple of other items are dropped to increase. Like, a lot of jump scares are bad. John Carpenter is one of the directors who can do jump scares in a way where, excuse me, where it works, where it doesn't feel cheap, and just, yeah. And Adrienne Barbeau sounds great on the radio, which sounds like an she looks great as well. I'm just saying, you could imagine people turning into her, tuning, whatever, into her radio broadcast night after night, and all the payphones ring for no discernible reason, and glass starts cracking, and and you have the, like, I don't know what even the how to describe it, I guess vibrate some of the glass bottles inside there was like a 7-Eleven type store, like vibrate, and like, just, yeah, it's so effective. I think a lot of the most effective horror is when there is no rational explanation for what's happening, and that's something that, yeah, like, there's a certain logic to it, but you can't explain it without accepting supernatural phenomena. And that's something he does great in this movie and others. Again, I'm not going to give away which ones, but just, like, don't get me wrong, there are, horror movies where you can completely explain the things and they're still very effective. But it is very, like, and, yeah, just to briefly, like, basically the the ringing and the car alarm and car horns, glass shattering, all this stuff. The way I see it, it's basically that the 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 psychic power of these, the dead crew of the Elizabeth Dane, the psychic power, the righteous fury, the complete, like, their hatred of the original six founder, the conspirators, and their desire for revenge, and how, like, the universe kind of agrees that they deserve revenge because it was horrible what was done to them. The like, yeah, the strength of that is so powerful that even before the fog really, like, once the fog arrives, if the fog is close to you, the zombies can manifest, and they can literally, they're in part ghosts, but they are in some ways closer to zombies because, unlike ghosts, they can physically attack you. They can grab you, they can stab you, and the yeah. So when the fog is close to you, that can happen. Long before it gets near you, it's so powerful already, even from afar, that it can set off car alarms and all these things. Just one brief thing I wanted to say is, again, just the ghost story. It's so brilliant. Like, you have, like, other writers and directors. They'll be like, well, I mean, I gotta add something. Let's see. Let's just add this, and they don't really put a lot of effort into it. But John Carpenter, like, with the ghost story being told around the campfire, like, we're gonna be told much, more significant details about this not very far into the movie. When the, yeah, when the father, I don't know, I guess 20-30 minutes into the movie, maybe, when the father starts reading, maybe it is long. And anyway, the but yeah, the ghost story being told there, it's such a brilliant to have characters. He's not telling the ghost story because he thinks that this is going to be, like, he's not intentionally warning them the way that Stevie on the radio at the end is intentionally warning people about the fog. he's just like, this is, yeah, let's have a ghost story, and it's a ghost story that he knows, and he's just, I really love, again, so many other writers and directors would have had, like, after he's done telling the story, like, yeah, gotcha, you thought, yeah, let's go to bed now. But no, from the very start to the very end, like, he's not on screen for that long, but he's, I don't know if the word is creepy, but there is a sense of, like, you, yeah, like this is, the atmosphere is never disrupted. The John Carpenter knew that it wasn't necessary to, like, do a wink and a nod to the audience there or something. No, it's, you can let that kind of thing just sit. You can let it breathe. And another thing, he doesn't like quick cut around it, and he doesn't, like, taint the experience with, like, a bunch of flashback footage or something. No, it's just, it is the purest distillation. It's almost as if you're there. It's a person telling a ghost story, and then every so you'll see, like, the kids' reaction shots, and they're, like, really enthralled and such. But he knows that he doesn't need to make it, like, big. And it's not as though the movie never does get, like, you have the part where was it like a trawler? Was that what they called the ship? They like look, and from the fog, and you see, like, this big, like, ship, yeah, you see the Elizabeth Dane right there in the fog. So clearly they were able to make, you could have used that, cut that little bit, and excuse me, just, maybe not where the modern day sailors are seeing the thing, but, like, the what's it called, yeah, just the shot of the Elizabeth Dane, and just, but yeah, just, the story, we're immediately told the core ghost story. We just don't know all the details yet, and the priest will find out, and he will, tell them to some of the other uh, townspeople. But yeah, it's great job. I'm really glad that he realized, oh, I gotta add at least a little bit of a couple of minutes of material, and he wrote that, because it is, like, and that's another thing, like, when he wrote that, he knew this is not going to ruin the movie for people, because it is essentially telling you a lot of what is going, like, it's setup. It's very strong setup for what is to come. And yeah, like, a lot of, like, today people are obsessed with twists, and you can't see things coming, and, like, as if it's automatically good that you're surprising people. Like, Shakespeare's plays have been retold without, like, adding twists for hundreds of years, and people will pay big money. You have sellout shows. You know, it's not necessary to surprise the audience. The people, it can be good. I'm not saying twists are necessarily bad, they're just not necessarily good. The thing is, when you're surprised, it does something to your brain, and a lot of people like the sensation of being surprised, and sometimes will forgive bad twists or be annoyed if there are no twists simply because of that. But that's just because we're spoiled. It doesn't mean that it's necessary for a story to have twists. Anyway, back to the notes. Such effective slow building of tension as we see these various inexplicable phenomena. And I love how every so often we do get like several seconds of silence before the next phenomena starts up. We get lulled into a false sense of security. For example, all the payphones ring, and then that lasts for a few seconds, and then we go inside the store, and then there's a few seconds where, like, I'm not. Are we hearing? I don't think we hear the payphones. I guess the payphones might not be in the same location. It might have cut to a different location. But yeah, nothing. And this guy's, like, cleaning up before he's gonna clean up. He's gonna close shop, go home, and then suddenly you have all this, like the glass is vibrating, and some crack, and yeah, some cracks forming, and some, yeah. Let's see. We get a few seconds of silence, and then suddenly all the car horns honk at the exact same time. It's just, it's such a great, just horror, like, well, not not horrifying. That's not the word, but yeah, it's horrifying once we see zombies like stabbing people and this sort of thing. But it's just, it's chilling. It's this kind of thing. Like, I mean, it's a car horn, whatever. It's not a big deal. But when so many honk at the exact same time and with no one in the car, that's just unsettling. It's yeah, just excuse me. The let's see, what's the word? And part of it is the lights all come on at the exact same time. They could easily have had like a few of them coming on and then a few more, but no, it's like, I don't know, maybe, I didn't count, 8, 12 cars or something, all of them. And it's not hugely difficult for the filmmaker to arrange that all of them, if I had to guess, it's like that kind of, like, you can start lights electronically, right? So there's probably, they like do a thing where they like can set all the cars off electronically with just flipping a single switch, so they all do it at the same, something like that. I would guess. Let's see. But it is like, it's legitimately, that's some of the most effective horror, when you take everyday stuff, like, you know I don't know, today payphones aren't quite so I you know whatever. I'm not sure I've ever used a payphone, so I don't notice if they're there or not. Like, I take buses, so I notice if a bus stop is there or not, but I don't take notice of payphones. Let's see. So yeah, they're not so common today. In 1980, there were a lot of payphones. So back then, when this was in theaters, everybody knew what a payphone was. And cars with like headlights and horns, and like this little 7-Eleven store with where you can buy like a bunch of drinks in glass bottles. These are so common. You wouldn't think that something like that could be scary, could be unsettling. It's comfortable, and like, horror by definition is not comfortable. So you're taking something that's like just part of every, like, I can imagine, like, right after watching this movie, some people walking home from the theater at night, when they spotted a payphone, they were probably like, because that's it leaves an impact. And like, and maybe the next time, yeah, maybe when they headed for their car or something to drive home, but yeah, it's when something that is generally thought, like, a car that's just parked is harmless, and so are payphones and glass bottles, that, not always, but glass bottles that are in, like, what's gonna happen? It's not, no one's gonna like use it, like, it's, yeah, it's behind this glass door kind of thing. It's currently no threat to anyone at all. And then suddenly you have these small, unsettling, like, yeah, like, it's so effective. And just, yeah, they do such a great job on that. It's really, really, yeah, the what's the word? unsettling and this kind of the yeah, part of it is that you can't explain it rationally. There's no rational explanation for these kinds of things. And the yeah, let's see. And it's this there's this slightly ominous quality to it. You know, you don't you don't know exactly what's coming, but you understand that means while just a few seconds before it happened, things were fine, whatever. But now that that's happened, there's something wrong. We've made there's some decision has been made that have made things worse in a way that we can't yet quite grasp. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. Like, you know, let's say that, for an example of something where something happens, but basically what's going. Like, let's say that you know, yes, you're about to cross the street, and suddenly you hear a loud car engine approaching, and maybe they even honk the horn. Immediately, you think to yourself, I better not get, I better not set foot on the road itself, streets, whatever, before that guy has driven past, or he might hit me. That's like, okay, suddenly something happened, but I get it. I know what's going on. I'll just, I'll let this happen, and that'll be it. But in this case, it's like, what are you going to have? What are you going to do? And that's part of the thing. Like later in the film, once Stevie sees the fog creeping into like the what's it, lighthouse? Is that what it's called? Where she has the radio. It's like the like yeah. What is the smart course of action here? Is she gonna try to like run through it? Because she already, there's yeah. Or is she gonna climb up to? I mean, it's fog. It'll go with. Like it's not like yeah. Like hypothetically, let's say that the problem was like what's it called? Yeah, let's say there was a fire and maybe she doesn't have a fire extinguisher, though maybe she does, but let's hypothetically say that she can get her hands on like a piece of like a just a piece of cloth, like a jacket or something, and she can soak that in water and put it on and run out through the fire and minimize how much she'll get hurt, because once it's wet, if it's wet with water, mind you, it's not going to catch fire, and it'll provide a small barrier between her and the fire. And you know, I should maybe clarify. What I'm talking about is like there's only a little fire at this point. I'm not saying that it's not necessarily the best idea if there's a lot of fire. But anyway, yeah. So I really love seeing Jamie Lee Curtis and things, and she plays this role so differently from Laurie Strode, and I quite like the banter between Elizabeth and Nick. Yeah, just like there's so much more of a sense of adventure to Elizabeth than to Laurie Strode, and she's more confident in like situations that she's not, completely used to and that kind of thing. And the windows of their car shatter. Again, like it's car windows. How can you make car windows scary? It's not like they're being shot at through car windows. No, but when all the glass shatters just like that, yeah, that's really unsettling. Fog bank out there. And there's a fog bank out there. excellent reveal on the fog zombies. At first, you can just make out that there's some shapes standing in the fog, like with Michael Myers. They don't have to be moving, especially not fast, at least not right away, in order to scare the audience. And good job on the violence and gore when they attack. It really, like, from right away sets up that there is a very clear danger. Or right away, I guess 20 or 30 minutes into the movie, whatever, there's, yeah, it's very clear that there is something, yeah. Now, yeah, and let's see, we basically, yeah, excuse me, we basically guess from when the trawler is attacked that these are, excuse me, this is related to the campfire story. Let me think. The campfire, the campfire says that the Elizabeth Dane sank, but and that that at some point they would, its crew would walk again, if I recall. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% certain about that last part. And yeah, we're it's very clear that that's what's happening now. And I get how it would work without us having heard the ghost story. I mean, I guess it might be interesting to do like a version of the movie where you edit that part out, you know, for like a DVD or Blu-ray release, where just like, watch, yeah, yeah, actually, maybe even, although I'm not certain about this, but maybe even make a version that has, like, that doesn't have the violence and gore that John Carpenter went and added. Although I don't know if that's not really super interesting to do. Like, that would probably just make it a lesser movie. Whereas removing removing the ghost story at the start, I don't think it would make the movie better, but it is interesting to watch the movie without having seen that scene. But yeah, I don't know. I could imagine someone would do like a DVD release where they just like removed stuff that was good to have in the movie, because I have seen someone add stuff that everyone's glad's not in the everyone's glad is not in the movie. There's a It's possible to buy a version of Terminator 2 that will allow you to play a version that has the original ending. I legitimately, like, I don't know, I guess James Cameron still doesn't think that it's a bad idea. I mean, sometimes you just really do, sometimes it's hard to understand why he, like, sometimes you look at some of his ideas and you're like, why did he think this was a good idea? Anyway, I know, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil what the ending is. Now, I'm not going to spoil any part of T2 in this. Only talking about this movie. And I'm also not going to I'm not going to spoil anything from the remake, because I don't remember any. I don't think I remember a single. Yeah, I remember that Tom Welling, who was, I liked him fine as Superman, and Maggie Grace from Taken are in that movie. That's literally all I remember at all. What kind of fog blows against the wind? Again, just an excellent little, like, immediately you realize there's something wrong there. And your lizard brain goes, there's some will at play here that we don't fully understand yet, but it's dangerous. It really goes directly to the lizard brain, where, like, basically the lizard brain perceives it as like a predator that you can't currently see, because we used to live, very close to dangerous predators. But yeah, for a movie like, yeah, we immediately get a sense of there's something wrong with the knocking, and it just keeps going with brief pauses, but like does it maybe knock like 4 times or something? Just it again. It's knocking on a door. How is this scary? It's knocking. Like I guess you could say that sometimes there's someone will knock on your door that's actually dangerous, but a lot of Americans would be like, well, I'll just ready my gun and I'll figure out if it's dangerous or not. I'll only very carefully or briefly open the door, something, but this is just the if just from hearing the sound of it here, and it's not even that, like, it's maybe like the rhythm, if that makes sense, of the knocking, like isn't it's like it's like four knocks, and like knock, 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 knock. It feels like something that isn't alive. It doesn't sound the way that a living person would knock. you know, it would maybe be like knock knock kind of thing. Yeah, I don't have a soundboard, so I have to just yeah. And then we see it's a pirate hook knocking on the door, and then the doorbell and the grandfather clock glass cracks, and finally Nick opens the door and the fog zombie is gone, and like the audience is like, you don't know how lucky you are that like yeah. And the waves roll in, and first there's the gold coin, and then there's the wooden board from the Elizabeth Dane with the word Dane clearly written on it. The kid isn't too bad of an actor. I would say the in like the kids in the first Halloween movie, I'd say, are better. Anyway, and he does get like being this kind of annoying, and yeah, being annoying and being this over eager kid quite well. I thought you wanted to move on to Vancouver eventually. So she wants to spend more time with him than absolutely necessary. That's kind of sweet. And Annie from Halloween also plays a different character here pretty well. And they spot the trawler, and just immediately, like, the audience get like, we already know some of what they're gonna find, but it's still like unset. Like we're like, oh, this is, oh, don't do it, don't do it, stay away from that trawler. This whole town sits for 100 years with nothing happening, and then one night it just comes apart. There's water in the generator, but the deck is dry as a bone. I really love the yes ma'am exchange. If I recall, it's in the IMDb quotes section. So if you don't remember it exactly, it's just, yeah. And the door creaks open, and Father Malone walks right out of just pitch black darkness. Again, just such great jump scares. It's like I've seen really bad jump scares, but John Carpenter can really do them well. He stood in the shadows to prevent me from getting a good look at his face, which is something he still does as a fog zombie. Like even when the priest when Father Malone can see the glowing red eyes of Blake, we still can't see his face. It's yeah, and it is a great, like, as far as I understand, like the let's see, today, at least in first world countries, leprosy is not common, but back then, yeah, the some people got leprosy, including some rich people. It wasn't one of those things that basically only happens to really poor people. The like, as a quick comparison, there was, if you go far enough back, there are like there were a bunch of people who, I forget what it's called, but they like got really frail, brittle bones because they spent so much time in these mines, so they didn't get sun. And yeah, and that didn't happen to like people who could be out in the sun, when they wanted to. That only happened to these people, these miners. But yeah, leprosy. So yeah, in this case, some rich people got leprosy, and they were gonna set up a leper colony. And the yeah, the Father Malone's ancestor, yeah, he thought, that's, I don't want a leper colony near me, and it's again like the a lot of awful things are a result of someone feeling uncomfortable about something or hating something. And yeah, it's such a great, like, Carpenter understood you don't have to make this extremely complex. Like, I guess back then it was maybe not as usual, but like more recently we'll have like horror movies that think that you have to weave this extremely complicated, hard to follow kind of plot. And here it's extremely simple. The there were the six conspirators wanted the gold but didn't want the leper colony near them, so they, intentionally made the ship crash. They retrieved the gold, and 100 years later, the fog rolls in, and the crew of the ship come and kill 6 people, all of whom are direct descendants of the 6 conspirators. It's incredibly straightforward. It's an elevator pitch. You can like you can so quickly describe it, but 90 minutes of it never gets boring. It's and that's some of John Carpenter's best work is in part because of how simple. And that's actually, I'm gonna try to notice how much more complex. Like, there's a lot going on in Big Trouble in Little China, but yeah, some of his best work, it's very simple. It's very straightforward, and just the because of that, it's so much more effective, because you're not using a lot of brain power comprehending what you're seeing, which frees up a lot of brain power to feel the fear of it. I'm not saying, again, there are some really great, very complicated and complex horror movies, but I'm just saying sometimes more complex doesn't always mean better. Let's see. What's it like? And he describes drunkenness when she was talking about fishing. Like, I suppose, she could, what is, like, that's what Simonson describes as playing the pronoun game, I want to say. Where's the, whatever. And she could have been clever, I suppose, but it is just kind of funny how, she asks that, and he's like, oh, it's the same every time, the room starts spinning, and you get a little, like, it's just excellent reading of the journal. It never gets boring, and, in part, it's because of the intercutting with Nick and Elizabeth, but literally, for several minutes, whenever we see the father, and it's, these several minutes are cut up. It cuts to Nick and Elizabeth. For several minutes, when we see the father, he's reading aloud something that happened 100 years ago. It's not as though there's something new happening right now. It's new information to the audience and to some of the characters, but it could so easily be boring, and it never is. Like, it's yeah. And again, and I'm not saying that, there are some movies where there would have been like flashback footage or something, and for some movies that would have been fine. But when I watch this movie, I don't miss that. The there is a certain, It's also something like the first Portal game, for example. Just the minimalism of it makes it so effective. Now, let's see. I think I'll go to Vancouver now and jump scare right before and after that line. You might have expected the first, but not the second. You know, with the first one, I forget what exactly, but it keeps showing something, and you're like, oh, there's going to be something, but yeah. And yeah, I think I've basically already said this, but just in case. John Carpenter is one of the directors who does excellent jump scares. I don't mind his jump scares. And, the priest realizes the stone revealing the journal coincided with the car alarms and the 6 conspirators meeting. Let's see. Is that a no? Dripping with sarcasm. I love it. And salt water pours out of the letters spelling Dane on the wooden board and like mess up the tape player, and then the board just catches fire, and again she very quickly puts out the fire. So you would think it's like, well, there's no longer a fire, there's nothing to worry about. But that's really, really like again, there's no rational explanation. No matter what you say, you cannot explain why that happened within the fiction of the movie. Obviously, like the film, yeah, with the movie making, it's effects, but and that's again another thing. Like, it's very simple and it's not difficult to accomplish, but it's it's effective in part because like when we're seeing it, we know what we're seeing. It's not some kind of like weird like again, like with the car alarms and the payphones, we know what these objects are. So we understand, and we know what they can and can't do. So when we see them do things they can't do, it's unsettling. Excuse me. Now let's see but yeah, like most likely they had like some kind of like they had a little bit of a little pump and like what's it called, yeah, the little bit of water that they need, and they just from off screen pump a little bit of water into the prop. And what's water gonna do? Once it runs out of space, it's gonna rise. And that's all. But when you see it in the movie, and you're hopefully not thinking about how do they do this, it's very unsettling. You see it, and like you understand what you're seeing, but you don't really want to believe it. Yeah. How can a man drown without touching water? Sounds like a Zen riddle. But again, yeah, it's a great like exactly. How did that? How could that possibly have happened? But they're looking right at it. They know that it happened. They just can't explain it. I love how Andy is kind of annoyed to have to tell his mother about the board again, as if how could she possibly have forgotten? Because to him it was already important, where to her it only just now became important. Like, just yeah, it's a really great like that is something when John Carpenter writes child characters, like he does understand how the what's the word? He has a certain sense of what matters to them and what doesn't matter to them. And you really see that in this and in first Halloween movie, and just, yeah. And they talk about the fact that the body looks like it's been underwater for months. And Elizabeth finds the corpse creepy, so she turns her back on it. She might not be glad that she did. and the corpse picks. I'm not 100% certain what it picked up. Something sharp, and it completely silently steps off the gurney and walks towards Elizabeth. Very effective suspense. Let's see. Was that one of the things that was added, maybe? I forget. I read the full list of things that were added. And, you might say, well, it's the only time something like that happens in the movie, but the way I see it is basically excuse me, the power of the fog, of, the Elizabeth Dane wanting revenge, is bringing the dead back to life. In the case of the fog zombies, they've been dead and like undersea for 100 years. So the fact that this guy who died like you know less than 24 hours ago, bringing him back to life is absolutely nothing. And I also love the thing of like the fog that caused them to crash was a a natural phenomenon. That's why they had lighthouses, because it would be foggy and they would make sure to not you know but the fog that they then use is supernatural, and it's them like taking back power. And yeah, and Sandy shows that she does actually care, despite how cynical she can come off. She does care that her boss is upset. Hope no one gets lost out there in the fog. And we see the fog creeping in on the town. And also just like I there are some who would say, you need a very complex effect there, but it's basically just, yeah, it's fog. The fog machines are, you know, a lot of those have been used in movies, and for some of the shots, they add that just this slight like coloration to it that gets across the sense of the supernatural. It shouldn't look like that, but it's a simple process, and it works brilliantly. And that's like John Carpenter. When he was in his prime, he could do incredible work with almost no money and very simple effects and such, and with much just comparatively much more money and much more complex effects. Let's see. And the weatherman will be ready to check in with you. It is kind of sweet how they like each other from afar. They know each other's voices from listening to each other, and yeah. And now Stevie is legitimately worried about the fog. And Dan thinks that Stevie took something. You take a little something to keep you going for so long. Does it make you feel a little funny? I mean, he is actually kind of taking her seriously. It's just that he thinks, like, and it is like I said, what's the rational explanation? I mean, maybe drugs are involved or something. He's not even judging. He's just like, you know what? That's okay. You have a like she. It is pretty crazy how many hours she's apparently on the radio. And it's like, you take a little something to keep you going. Does it make you feel funny? Are you okay? Should someone come by and make sure nothing bad happens, or something. And he is genuinely, like, he is showing concern for her. He's not making fun of her for it. Just, yeah. Dan, stay on the phone. He hasn't seen enough of the crazy stuff happen for him to be worried yet. Dan, stay away from the door. John Carpenter realized how tense and suspenseful it is simply to see someone ignore a warning. That's literally like, yeah, he does end up being killed, But this is one of the ones where we barely see anything, isn't it? Is this the one where we see like cutlass stabbing? Anyway, we don't see much certainly, and sure, the audience knows that the fog has these violent things, but once the violence actually starts, it's over almost immediately. There are horror movies that have like several minutes of non-stop violence that's nowhere near as scary as just this scene of just we're literally just watching him ignore a warning, and the audience knows that he should heed the warning, and just as Stevie knows that he should, hence why she's warning him. But just that little bit, the sort of naivete of him that whatever, someone's what is it, like someone's knocking, and then he's like, they're not going to be happy when they see that someone's home. He's like figuring, oh, like burglars, and they're checking to see if someone's still there before they break in, or which is again so much more of a logical explanation. That's maybe also part of what makes this work so well. For so much of the movie, characters don't know. The like gradually more and more characters become aware of what's going on. But even by the end of it, like I guess, yeah, like some will, yeah, after the movie ends, the several deaths, the rumors and gossip will start to spread, and a bunch of people will start believing that it's true. But when you just like, why would they be? What's the word? Let me think. Yeah. Otherwise, the people who aren't seeing these things themselves, why would they believe that something so, again, not natural would happen? They can't explain it, so they assume it must not be true, because that's the way that we prefer to deal with things that we can't explain, especially today in the modern world. And there of course, there's still people who believe that there must be something, if but I'm not saying, sometimes there is. I'm not saying you're wrong or stupid or something. The let's see. Yeah, that's part of why it's so effective. For so much of the movie, there are a lot of people who don't know it yet, who don't know who don't realize that something supernatural is going on. They don't think, yeah, and yeah. So um, have I seen movies where like a lot of people know that something really messed up is going on, and because so many people know, it's not quite as scary. I'm not entirely sure I have seen something like that. Anyway, and Dan is killed. Excellently filmed and edited to only suggest what is going on. We the audience, of course, know what's going on, but instead of being shown it in detail, we picture it. This is an emergency. Excellent transition from her being this soothing voice on the radio, pleasant for people to listen to, into being like a public service, spreading this warning. And the fog disables the phone lines. Just, you almost get, and that's like, there are a lot of horror movies where like, oh, we gotta call the police. The phones are out, and it's very, it really gets to be a cliche. But in this, like, seeing the fog do it just so eerie, and yeah. And the fog disables, I don't know, it's a generator. Excuse me. Weird. I slept plenty last night. I shouldn't be sleepy. And all the power comes off in the entire town. which is again like, yeah, that's you know, at this point it's gotten like, you know, if it started like at a low kind of simmer, it's gotten real like, yeah, you know, it's becoming very dangerous and serious. And again, this is a movie where literally only 6 people die, and it, you know, it's not that graphic. It's mostly implied, and you know, more than 6 people are attacked by, you know, the beings that come out of the fog. But even when all the power goes out in the entire town, this is still not, you know, like, let's see, I mean, it's in part a zombie movie. It's not like we're witnessing dozens of zombies walking down the street or something, you know. But the fog keeps coming, and you know, they have to get away from the fog. And Stevie sees the fog approach the beach and worries about Andy, and the tension increases as she struggles with her generator, crying out his name. I think it's neat. And the nanny worries as she sees the fog approach, sends Andy, you know, are your bedroom windows closed? And he goes to check. And the nanny opens the door against the audience's, you know, yelled warnings, and she turns to make sure Andy goes to his room, and she's killed again off screen. It's such a great, like, you know, the if John Carpenter had been completely determined to, he could have made like, you know, he could have made sure everyone got, even if only a brief, on-screen death. You know, he could have added more blood or something, but he knew that it would be more effective without too much. Yeah, I really love the detail that it is specifically 6 people that are killed, and as far as I can tell at least, specifically all of them are descendants of the 6 co-conspirators who killed the lepers. You know, the town's founders. And yeah, you know, like 100 years later, it would still be people. Like, some of them would probably have moved out of the town, but there would still be some, you know, descendants of the original founders within, you know. And Nick manages to get Andy before the fog zombies catch up to him. Very tense. And Elizabeth struggles to start the car as the fog zombies approach. And I think it's also, maybe that doesn't play as well today, because by now it's a ridiculous cliche. Oh, the car won't start because we're in a horror movie and we need something to, you know, but in 1980, I'm pretty sure it wasn't much of a cliche yet. Miss Williams, will you please let me take you home? You're a little annoying, but you're right, Sandy. She does actually care. And Stevie tears up talking to Andy over the radio, explains she has to stay, and she describes where the fog is going. And it approaches Nick and Elizabeth in the car. And, excuse me, the tension and suspense that is built over the course of the film is coming to a head. Excuse me. You know, this is where, like, if it were like a slasher movie, then the slasher villain would be catching up to them, or, you know, yeah, you know, depending on the subgenre it was, but it's literally, it's fog, you know, like it's so, like, when a director can make you literally afraid of fog, that's talent, you know. And it is like, fog is like, you know, Silent Hill has gotten a lot of mileage out of fog. Again, talent, incredible talent. And yeah, just it is uncomfortable, in part because you can't see very far ahead of you, and that could hide something dangerous. Which in this movie, yeah, I'll leave it at that. You know, yeah, it. Yeah, let me just in this movie, and maybe also Silent Hill. I'm not gonna give details in this video for that. Yeah, something dangerous is hiding in the fog. It's yeah, and the let's see. Yeah, it's just it's we don't like it. We want to be able to see more clearly, but outright like being scared of it is not, unless some kind of horror story or something. Anyway, there's something in the fog. I mean, I guess it's possible that this movie is why fog was chosen for Silent Hill, because they could have used something else. It would have been, yeah, there that would have been an option, and they chose wisely to go with fog. And Stevie directs them to the church. Now, apparently, after Psycho star Janet Leigh was, you know, yeah, after appearing in Psycho, she got typecast. She was put in a bunch of bad horror movies. I'm really glad that here John Carpenter cast her in a great horror film. It's very clear that he was inspired by Psycho. Halloween especially, very inspired by Psycho. And Stevie walks down the spiral staircase to see the fog inside the radio station. And now she has to decide whether she's going to try to run through it, or if she's going to run back up and try to get above the fog, which is more likely to save her. And the father reads aloud some more of the journal, and they realize there's gold in the church as the fog zombies start attacking, smashing windows. John Carpenter was incredibly talented during the 70s and 80s before he basically gave up near the end of the 80s. I mean, literally, it's just actors' arms with some makeup to make them look like zombies, smashing, you know, smashing windows, and then like reaching through and trying to grab other actors. Like, how is this scary? You know, I've seen far more elaborate attempts at scaring audiences have way less effect, sometimes zero effect. But the build-up and the acting talent, the way it's filmed, the sound, just it's so effective. Like literally, like imagine actually working on it. It like sometimes they must have had to like remind themselves, yes, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's gonna look great in the movie. Because literally, like, they probably didn't even, like, these actors were probably just dressed more or less normally, and just, like, the arm itself was zombified with makeup. And they would, smash through this, like, sugar glass, and just, like, reach, trying to grab other actors, but it works. At this point in the movie, the audience is with the movie. We have accepted that if one of these arms manages to grab one of these people, they might, if they drag them up to the window, they might come in with the other arm and a weapon and kill them. And yeah, like it's just arms. It's people's arms, trying to grab, and it's so effective. It's just, yeah. And Stevie continues to move away from the fog, but she is running out of places to go. And the priest carries the cross made of gold, and we see around 6 to 8 zombies all at once for the first time as the priest tries to give them back the gold. Let's see. And the let's see. What I was thinking of was just briefly about the, if I think it was a wise decision to basically, like, when we see all the zombies here there at the end, it feels like the it makes sense. You know, they are basically all focusing on trying to get, yeah, probably very likely the priest is the main target right there. And the yeah, and briefly I wanted to say that the right, yeah, if, you know, the you might wonder, you know, why, if they stole the gold, why is there still this golden cross? Like, you know, why didn't they spend the gold? The way I see it, in part, it might be that they did spend some of the gold, and you know, they didn't end up spending all of it or something. The specific reason for the cross of gold, whether it was the only gold on the ship or not, you know, the way I see it, they maybe felt like they felt too guilty. The priest felt too guilty to spend it anywhere, and if he even just leaving it out for people to find would raise questions, you know. And he literally he walled up the cross of gold and the journal explaining all this stuff. So he wanted all this to be buried, you know. And I suppose there's even some chance that he tried to destroy the journal and the fog brought it back or something. But you know, certainly the fog was what removed the one stone hiding the you know, that, yeah, that, yeah, the stone specifically hiding the journal. But yeah, that's the way I see it. And let's see. And it's unclear if it was always a golden cross or if they maybe melted it and you know, made it into a cross. You know, they might have had, like, you know, yeah, usually they would make a cross like that out of maybe steel. But when they had so much gold, they melted it and made this cross. Yeah, glowing red eyes on Blake as he approaches and starts to unsheathe his cutlass. You know, something that makes that even more great to me is that I know that's Rob Bottin, who went on to do the effects for The Thing, because John Carpenter needed someone who was tall, who would look imposing when the, which is hilarious. If you watch him in interview, he's like such just happy, smiling, like fanboy, and like, you know, he appears on the on some DVDs for The Thing in this like feature length documentary. He's by far the most enjoyable part, but it's in general a great documentary. And yeah, it's just like he's talking about the experiences working on the movie, and it's like it's 18 years after they made the movie, if I recall, that that documentary was made, but he's still so excited about it all this time later, and he even admits, you know, I worked too hard and I had to check into a hospital, and I'm not gonna work that hard again, but like despite that, he's still like geeking out about how much fun it was to do, and the way that John Carpenter would respond if an effect didn't look great, like, thank you very much, Mr. Bottin. Just, but yeah, you know, he loved working with Carpenter, and he did amazing work on the Thing, and he is an imposing figure in this. You know, you don't see him for very long, but he makes an impression, you know. But yeah, apparently, like John Carpenter. So like, you know, when I see him do that, I'm just imagining him like so gleeful, like, yeah, I'm working with John Carpenter. This is amazing. Like, you know, just trying so hard not to geek out over getting to work. Just, you know, but like apparently I forget if it was, I forget which movie exactly it was that Bottin had come in to, try to get to work on with John Carpenter, but like they talked for a while, and Rob Bottin explains, John told me stand up, and he did, and he, and he retells in the interview documentary footage, and I thought he was gonna, he said stand up, and I thought he was gonna say, and get out, and just the way, like, I can't even completely do it justice, but he just like the physical performance of it, and like, yeah, but apparently no, like stand up. I want to see how tall you are. I want to see if you are tall enough to play a ghost in my movie. But yeah, Bottin, and I think it was maybe also in part because during the conversation, Bottin was having trouble. Like he couldn't really contain himself. He was like, I really want to work. I think this is amazing, and it's like, and he was worried that Carpenter was like, oh, I can't work with this guy. He's just, but just yeah. I I have a real soft spot for, I'm a real mark for this kind of, like, when I heard like Brad Fidel talking about, you know when he got to work on the Terminator, it was like one of the very first movies he did music for at all, and he's like, he's super excited about getting, at first he's like, yeah, Jim Cameron is explaining, oh, it's like, the way I see it, the movie is this, this, and this, and I want that to come through in the music. And Brad Fidel, he'd worked on a couple of things, and he'd be like, okay, so the director's gonna explain, and then I watched the movie before I do the music for it, and I'm like, where's the stuff he was talking about? I guess I kind of see it there, but wow. So when James Cameron is like, and James Cameron, when he's talking about something he loves working on, he's the passion. He's not quite like giddy like Rob Bottin, but he is like excited about it, and he's explaining. And Fidel is like, he's hiding that he's thinking, yeah, let's just let me see if I can actually see it in the movie. And then he starts watching the movie without music, mind you, without any score at all, and he's really getting into it. He's like, oh, this is amazing, and he goes from like, yeah, whatever, I guess it would be fine if I got the job, to him being like, I gotta do the music for this movie. And then like near the end, this is not a spoiler, but just like near the end, he's like, okay, this has to be it. The movie has to end now. I'm just too scared. And he accidentally says that out loud, and he's like, I thought I was just thinking it. Oh wow, well I just lost the job, and thankfully he didn't. But yeah, it is like, even without music, that movie is so intense, but yeah, it's the yeah, I love when like someone like that is really excited to get to work on a movie like this. Yeah, this or that kind of movie, and especially, I'm sorry, especially when they just just even briefly, even for a fraction of a second, think, oh, I totally lost the job, I screwed up, I totally lost, that's, yeah, I'm sorry, it's just, it's so life affirming when you have that kind of experience and then it goes well, you know also, like, for Superman Returns, I want to say his name is Brandon Routh. I'm sorry, I should have looked it up. I thought he did pretty well in the movie. There are problems with that movie. I don't think his performance is not. I feel like he gave what he felt was the right, But apparently, the first time he met director Bryan Singer, not Zinger, and now I can't think of a good singer to follow that up with. He, like, apparently, like, I forget exactly what, but like maybe he knocked something over or tripped or something, and he's thinking, oh god, I just lost the job. But instead, Bryan Singer was like, you are definitely right for Clark Kent, because he is kind of clumsy. I'm the sixth conspirator. And Stevie has now reached the top, and a zombie attacks her with a hook. She slides down towards another zombie. It just very, very, yeah. And we see this zombie's head, and there's like, I think maggots, but uh, worms maybe. I feel like they're a little long for maggots, but some kind of, yeah. And Blake appears to accept the Golden Cross, and or Gold Cross. But yeah, now it's also Shining Gold. Maybe that's why I wrote Gold. And the zombies and fog disappear. This movie and Halloween 1 both use Jamie Lee Curtis, and Nancy Kyes is, I think, her name, who plays Annie in Halloween and Sandy in this. Yeah, both used very well in both movies. I love the closing radio broadcast. More horror movies need to open on campfire ghost stories and end on someone broadcasting an ominous warning on the radio. It really is just imagine driving like near the town and you don't know anything that's happened. And you just like you're sitting there tuning the trying to find a radio station that says something interesting. Imagine reaching a radio station and then hearing beware when the fog rolls in, and just hearing that and being like, what is going on? What makes her say that? Why should I be worried about the fog? I'm not in a boat. She's, just, yeah. And the priest wonders why he wasn't taken, and the fog comes in under the door, and Blake just chops his head off with this awesome sound. Just such good work. Again, I like in horror movies, I've seen dozens of decapitations, and this is one of the most like because that is such a great, like, they really put effort into making that, and it's important because it's the last thing we hear other than score, and it is the big final kind of, and I don't know if you want to call it a twist, but it is a good kind of, when you hear the radio broadcast, you think that's the last thing you're going to see, but then the priest, very briefly, yeah, I think it works well as just coming in at the very end, and yeah, now there's six. Now they managed to kill six people, and excuse me, which like, that's not, you don't know, excuse me, you don't know exactly that when you watch the opening with the, what's it called? Yeah, when you, excuse me, when you watch the opening with the ghost story, but it does feel like a good kind of book ending of like the first thing is you being told about these ghosts, and the very last thing, like literally the last thing before the credits start rolling, is this violent attack from one of these ghosts, and maybe especially like, is the priest the first character we might have met Stevie by then, but one of the first characters we meet. Yeah. Now I guess, let me see, just briefly, I don't know if I'll find the quote again, so I'll just deal with it here briefly. I read, actually, the I guess it makes sense to put this in the next section. Yeah, I'll move on to the next section. Notes taken while watching. Notes taken before watching. Sorry about that. I read at least one critic who said that he didn't. Let's see. The different story, like that it, ultimately the different story strands never come together. Where, throughout the movie, or not enough of them come together. Yeah, some of them do come together. I mean, Andy does end up with Elizabeth and Nick, who ends up talking to the priest. The only Stevie doesn't come into direct physical contact with the other characters, but by the end of the movie, basically all the story strands have gathered together. But I guess the that critic felt that it was too little too late or something like that. I honestly, I get what he's saying, and I could maybe see how it could maybe the movie would be more effective if it was a what's the word? Yeah, I think that it works really well because that means that we have a lot of different characters who separately experience these. Like, hypothetically, I don't think I think you would have had to change the movie a lot if you, yeah, let's hypothetically say that the entire movie was from the perspective of, let's go with Elizabeth and Nick, that you never saw something they didn't see, and they were the ones going around to all these different places, and, yeah, something like that. I think you would have to change. I feel like the way it is now, it works really well that you have, like, yeah, the little bit of time you spend with Andy and some of the time with Stevie, you have the board from Elizabeth Dane. The time you spend with Nick and Elizabeth includes the eyeless, corpse, and them finding the other bodies, also on the trawler, and the time spent with the priest. I guess, yeah, maybe Sandy, and I'm sorry, Mayor. I'm gonna go with Mayor Janet Leigh. The yeah, the that's where we get the priest recounting what's in the book, what's in the journal, or sorry, reading from the journal, and that's I it works really well that these are all separate. I feel like, I mean, you know it's not like John Carpenter always does movies where characters split off into separate groups like this. So the yeah, it would have to change a lot. Maybe part of it is that it's like a ghost story, and you just kind of accept that not everything that happens in the ghost story happens to the same few people. I don't know. But I do understand what he means. Now, given that this movie is set in Antonio Bay, I suppose it would be appropriate to refer to the citizens of the town as Antonio Baydarens. Now, when I do a word search for all the information I have in this entire document, the word pirate only comes up 5 times, and it's never from an official source. It tends to be in user reviews. I guess technically they're not pirate ghosts. It's just that to us they look like pirates because it's so long ago. Like, it wasn't only pirates who would use, like, cutlass and this. I guess the hook is fairly distinctly pirate of a thing, but like the cutlass, that could easily be like a conquering shit. Yeah, it wouldn't have to be pirates. I appreciate that this movie actually admits that a lot of American and British well-funded buildings and such, you can trace the money for that back to it being stolen by the people who eventually used it or their ancestors, and the pain is still felt to some people affected, and that's, you know, it makes a good, a lot of good ghost stories come from pain in, it's not always that someone intentionally did something wrong, but there is this sense that, yeah. I agree that this movie did not need more gore and blood than it does have, and I think it was the right decision by Carpenter to go back and add a little bit of blood there is. I do think the movie would have felt like all build up and no payoff, at least somewhat, if there really was absolutely no gore or blood. And yeah, that's, again, that section is very short, as has happened in other recent videos. IMDb, Wikipedia, and critic sites is the final section. me. So let's see. And I guess right. So yeah, the critics' consensus of The Fog 2005, The Fog is a so-so remake of a so-so movie lacking scarce suspense or originality. See, I would say that the 1981 is way more than so-so, but anyway. And it has a 4% and audience 19% score with 228,576 user ratings. Of the 70 total critic reviews, only 3 of them are fresh. I have no idea how you could think that it doesn't deserve rotten, but, you know, whatever. Maybe they were feeling generous. It has average rating of 2.71 out of 10. And an audience, for the audience, the average rating is 2.09. Let's see. While the, yeah, The Fog. Let's see. Consensus. A well-crafted return to horror for genre giant John Carpenter, The Fog rolls in and wraps viewers in suitably slow-building chills. Well put. Has a 76%, and but only 55, so it's not certified fresh as far as I know. And has a 64% audience score with 49,408 user ratings. And out of the 55 total critic reviews, 42 of them are fresh. And the average rating is 6.53 out of 10. And the average user rating is 3.55. So I am gonna scroll through the, let's see, I guess, just briefly I'm gonna see if the ones that are like, yeah, I'm just briefly gonna go through the ones that I singled out before I get into, okay. So, yes, this is a Rotten Tomatoes critic review. Ultimately, it's a John Carpenter movie concerned with group dynamics, unhelpful authority figures, strong women, the sins of the past, and that moment when helpless isolation shades into outright terror. And yeah, very well put. Carpenter scared the wits out of audiences from coast to coast with Halloween. That was a treat, but The Fog is merely a series of bewitching tricks assembled by film school craftsmen who believed that he could frighten people with slight gimmickry. I can understand the, and I would definitely say, you know, like, this gets a 9 out of 10 on like personal score, but critical score, I would give it a 7 out of 10. Halloween is a 10 out of 10, both critic score and personal score for me. It's definitely much better, but I do think that this is still very, yeah, I mean, it's Halloween is a hard act to follow. You know, The Thing manages, and from what I remember, so does Prince of Darkness. But yeah, the let's see, yeah, You know, I don't think that every single movie he makes has to be like one of the best ever made. Carpenter has always been a master of scaring us with what we're not seeing as opposed to delivering an onslaught of carnage to assault our senses. The Fog shows that you can scare the hell out of people without showing them a lot. Though the plot is implausible and the unfolding story hardly makes any sense, Carpenter stylishly presents an eerie atmosphere for the zombie invasion. Implausible? And hardly makes any sense. Yeah, I see, I noted to try to figure out what he's talking about. I still don't really know what that critic is referring. Implausible and hardly makes any sense. Yeah, I don't know. The Fog is right in line with the types of film Carpenter made before his professional fall from grace. It's unpretentious, genre fun, stylishly assembled, and populated with colorful characters. I would have to agree. Released 4 years after the bicentennial, The Fog might be a jaundiced corrective to the often uncritical self-congratulation of America's birthday celebration, with the ghosts as manifestations of manifest destiny's bloody heritage. Very well put, yes. Makes the most of the dramatic possibilities inherent in an isolated coastal town, as well as the scare potential of darkness, fog, and silent strangers bearing longshoremen's hooks. During this period, Carpenter and his fine collaborator Lake Deborah Hill were so good at crafting suspenseful, slow-burn horror stories with multiple storylines. And yeah, I think it's yeah, well crafted, as they orchestrates a thick pall of apprehension and good time suspense, creates a sense of near apocalyptic gloom, not up to Carpenter's Halloween or The Thing, but a solid atmospheric suspense film nevertheless. Is that? No. Okay. The movie's made with style and energy, but it needs a better villain. Now, as Ebert, I don't really. I find it incredibly effective, but anyway. 3 or 4 half-developed plots in search of a central thread. Central thread. I mean, that is true. It doesn't really. Yeah, I can't really argue with that. That is definitely something that could, yeah. Carpenter provides some wonderfully eerie images, and I believe this is a Rotten Tomatoes user review. This film still holds the viewer with a slow but effective build of tension and scared. The sequence shot at the culprit's home with the little boy trapped and the 3 trying to escape what's in the fog is some of the tightest editing and visual composition I have seen in movies in a very long time. Good performances all around, and as solid a ghost story as you will ever have fun watching. Add to that what I believe to be Carpenter's best music score, as well. Music in the right places. This is a must-see. Yeah. I don't know if I would say it's the best of his music, but it is great. It's up there. And I believe this is also a critic review, user review. I actually like The Fog over many other things that John Carpenter has created. It's one of his winning and most underrated films, in my opinion. It has a slow burn of denseness to it that gels into a rollicking 30-plus minutes of excitement. Most people find it to be a get-on-with-it kind of territory. There is some suspenseful scenes leading up to the final third, and it works well with all the characters learning about what's going on. Pretty good story, music is done well, and the majority of the characters are much better in this one than the majority of his other films. I'm not sure I would say that, but anyway. I highly recommend this one if you don't have anything to watch. I'll say lazy Sunday afternoon. Give this a shot. 90 minutes worth your time. I don't really feel, he's get on with it sort of movie. I don't really. I've never found it boring. I'm not sure. I don't think it's possible that John Carpenter has made a movie that is boring or actually slow rather than just, carefully paced at some point in the 70s or 80s. But if so, I haven't watched it. I will definitely say that there are pacing problems with, you know, some of the stuff he's made in like 90s and 2000s, 2010s. Lock your doors, bolt your windows. There is something in the fog. There's an atmosphere full of dread and eeriness that I haven't seen created like this before as he did in Halloween. Carpenter did an equally fascinating job in building up the fog's idiosyncratic atmosphere from the get-go until the very end. The rich-colored, shadow-drenched cinematography by Dean Cundey, the spine-chilling score that also has an ancient tale vibe into it to suit the story perfectly, the campfire intro scene, almost every subtle nuance of the movie's style made The Fog one of the most atmospheric horror films ever. It definitely, yeah, the let's see, yeah, well put. Rich colors, shadow drenched cinematography by Dean Cundey. The incredible talent. Now let's see. Then he goes on to say, unfortunately, The Fog is also Carpenter's most poorly written movie I've ever seen so far. The storytelling is all over the place. The characters are neither interesting or well established. The performances, however, are all great, especially from Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh, and Adrienne Barbeau. And the plot is far from being cohesive. Tons of plot holes aside. Plot holes? The movie even feels as if it forgot, what it has established from its beginning, and only returned to it at the third act. See, I read this review before rewatching it some days ago. I read this before rewatching it today, and I marked this to try to notice what he was talking about. I don't really know what. Let's see. Maybe he thinks that it seems like the fog and the zombies should have gotten around to sooner. Should have reached the point where they go more aggressively. Because for sure they do, and that's something, there are horror movies where it's like, why is it only now that it's getting as aggressive as it is? And some movies distract from that well, or explain it well. I would say that a number of supernatural ones do a good job. I've always felt that the original, what's it called? Paranormal Activity does a good job, and I won't say why in this. I believe I say it in one of the videos I did it on it back when it, not back when it was originally made, but back when it hit theaters. Yeah, in like 2009 or something. Because originally it was made in 2007, but they didn't put it in major theaters right away. I forget why, but I would say that movie has a good explanation for why. Does this? I mean, I I guess I'm just not sure that I see it as the zombies, like, that they feel they have a real sense of urgency about it. I don't think that they. I guess maybe part of what, like, it just makes sense to me that, well, they move using the fog. The fog is what's causing all this. So it the what's the word? The It just makes sense that it also moves slowly like fog and somewhat without purpose like fog. Now, let's see. Then he goes on to say, I wasn't prepared to see these glaring storytelling inadequacies in a Carpenter film, but what disappointed me even more is the fog's lack of flexible and effective camera work that is necessary for a horror movie. When it comes to building up to jump scare scenes, John Carpenter is a real master, and there's no better example than Halloween. But here all the jump scares fall entirely flat and felt so cheap and poorly executed, not to mention the assault and attack scenes, completely ruined by too many cuts. It's so weird that Halloween, which came out 2 years before The Fog, seems to be way more fresh and modern than this movie. Honestly, I became more interested in the characters and the story. The middle of the second act, the third act is very good and full of intense moments, but it's a bit rushed, especially near the very end. Gives it a 6.5 out of 10. I guess I can kind of see the thing about the camera work. In too many cuts. I guess I can kind of see. I found it to be very effective, but let's see. A horror that, yes, I believe this is still Rotten Tomatoes user reviews. A horror that has little, no bloody special effects, but relies on several jump scares and suspenseful scenes. Not one of Carpenter's best known films in his canon. That includes Halloween, Thing in Prison 13. Modest budget, still packs a punch and delivers a suspenseful film nevertheless. Similarities to Halloween include synthesizer and piano instrument soundtrack and casting with Jamie Lee Curtis. Let's see. Fog is 1980 film directed and written by John Carpenter. It is another horror film to add to his work. This film immediately introduces a mysterious atmosphere and begins slowly paced, gradually revealing what the unease is that the viewer is first introduced to with its haunting soundtrack and classic campfire ghost story. To kick things off, The Fog boasts some impressive direction from John Carpenter, who clearly shows his experience in the horror genre. Uses fog very well, with long-distance shots at times, and shots of the fog slowly creeping under the door. This is a very eerie film, as the fog is emitted in a way throughout the storytelling and direction that its reasoning for even being there is unknown, and its actions are not completely justified. This, however, and he goes on to say, this, however, also a weakness in my opinion. I believe the storytelling has not been crafted very well, and whilst it's definitely a very eerie film, the plot just doesn't fit together solidly, and therefore there's an underlying simplicity of the film. There isn't too much in the way of storytelling managed to really catch my interest. This isn't helped by the lack of character development either. Well, it seems like they are just there for the purpose of being there. That's pretty well put. Yeah, I guess that's fair. I can't really deny that. Lack of character development. The characters all seem like they are just there for the purpose of being there. Yeah, it is not as well written as other of his movies. I do stand by my 9 out of 10. This is what brings it down from a perfect 10 for me. Another positive that I can give this film, though, is that the soundtrack is very good and extremely fitting to the tone of the film. It builds into the atmosphere of the film, reflects the feelings of the characters in a way. We're unsure of what this fog is and why it's there, here. Overall, The Fog is a decent horror film that deserves some recognition for its fantastic music and direction, but it is definitely brought down by its lack of a solid story and uninteresting characters. Saw this on a foggy night when I was 14. I didn't sleep well that night. I can imagine. And I think these, yes, now we have gotten to, let's see, Metacritic critic reviews. John Carpenter is anything but subtle in his approach to genre material. You don't think this is subtle? Story, exposition, and setting are well established before the opening titles are over, and the fog proceeds to layer one fright atop another. Let's see. Yeah, and then they did give it a 70 out of 100, so it's not super negative review. It's going to give it a 60 out of 100. Even amid all the campy, uneven creepiness, the fog unleashes. You have to give it up to Carpenter for continuing his knack of making women just as ready as men to get into heroic survival mode whenever some strange crap goes down. And 50 out of 100. This is Ebert's. The Fog is encouraging because it contains another demonstration of Carpenter's considerable directing talents. He picked the wrong story, I think, but he directs it with a flourish. This isn't a great movie, but it does show great promise from Carpenter. This is also a 50 out of 100 review. The Fog needs more suggestive magic to sustain its far-fetched premise. There's no doubt that Carpenter has talent to spare, but he's misjudged his gifts. This time, The Fog ought to come on little cat feet, but its tread is heavy and literal. The harder it tries, the sillier it gets. See, again, I read that before watching the movie, and I couldn't really recognize that as being my experience. I don't really have anything to say. Maybe he's right and I just don't see it. And again, 50 out of 100. The Fog is constructed of random diversions. There are too many storylines which necessitate so much cross-cutting that no one sequence can ever build to a decent climax. The movie looks quite pretty. The prettiness of this sort is beside the point in such a film. Yeah, maybe. The cross-cutting does... That is, yeah, there's some truth there. The cross-cutting does hurt the ability to, yeah, build to a climax. And that maybe actually, yeah, there at the end, it does a lot better. And that, by the end, at the very end of the movie, Stevie is by herself, but other than that, all the characters we're following are in the same place. So it's not cross-cutting so much. And maybe if it had been cross-cutting less earlier, it would have been, yeah, there is some truth to that. I guess maybe one thing would be if Stevie really always was just a voice on the radio, if we never saw her, and then you had just one or two main characters and they were running around, yeah, I guess. But like I said, you'd have to change a lot about it. You couldn't have one or two characters experience all the things that happen in this. See, honestly, part of it is this kind of thing works better as a short movie. Because, that's part of it, the problem, I think. John Carpenter really strains to get it to 90 minutes. And, part of it is not a lot happens early in the film, and then near the end it really builds. Or it builds over the course of it, but near the end it comes to a climax. But at the end of the day, it is variations on the same thing, The Fog causes mysterious stuff to happen, and when it gets close enough, it it enables these zombies to attack and ultimately kill these, yeah, at the end of the day, it would have been, I would like to see someone do more or less this story, but do it as just a short movie, and let's see if that isn't much more effective, if that isn't far more, like, what's the word, like, if it was, what's the word? Concise, I guess, is the, yeah, because, yeah, at the end of the day, it doesn't really, let's see, it is more of a, excuse me, my back is still, excuse me, having some problems. Yeah, I think that is, because, yeah, at the end, like I said, you can sum up the movie very quickly, and the ghost story at the very start, you don't need much more than that. It would, like, maybe it would be interesting if someone, like, made a fan edit where basically it's just the priest, yeah, you have the ghost story at the very start, and then you see the priest find the journal and read aloud, and then then the fog comes in. He hands over the golden cross, but then Blake still kills him. So something like that, because at the end of the day, that is the core, and instead Carpenter has to get get away from that and get into the yeah. Let's see. And this person gave it a 40 out of 100. The film's real problem is Carpenter's diffuse narrative, which introduces far too many characters, forcing the director consistently to cut away to each story strand, thus destroying much of the suspense. What does work, however, is Carpenter's unmatched visual style and the marvelous photography of Dean Cundey. And this is a Metacritic user review. Maybe slim out the cast of characters a bit and focus on 2 to 3 rather than 5 to 6. There were just too many subplots going on, in my opinion. It's not a terrible film, but it's rather mediocre and should have been way better than it was. Than what it was. See, maybe I'm inclined to, excuse me, I'm inclined to forgive a lot because it's so effective, and the characters, I like, hypothetically, let's say that tomorrow someone told me they actually filmed a lot more for the movie, and if you buy the DVD, you can see there's deleted scenes. Yeah, I think I'd pay money to, and that's a big thing for me, because I don't like spending money unless I absolutely have to, unless it's something that's on sale. I would probably be willing to pay for a DVD that had deleted scenes so I could see more of these characters. And yeah, like I said, it's so much more scary than movies that I've seen that are higher rated sometimes, even. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. And this is IMDb trivia. The studio even installed fog machines at a cost of $350 each in the lobbies of selected cinemas where the movie was showing. That must have been amazing. I'm not gonna lie, that would probably have sent me screaming out. Holy crap. Like, yeah, that very, very good. Now, let's see. Oh, yeah, yeah. The lead ghost Blake was played by makeup specialist Rob Bottin. When Bottin asked for the job, John Carpenter asked him to stand up. Bottin then expected Carpenter to say, "And get out." When Carpenter saw that Bottin was a very large man at 6'5", which was needed for the character of Blake, he was hired. That really is just stand up and get out. It's so much, it's so fun to me. And Adrienne Barbeau and Tom Atkins also co-starred in Carpenter's Escape from New York. And then it says something that is kind of a spoiler, so I'm not going to read it aloud for that movie, so I'm not going to read it aloud. In the 1990s, John Carpenter mentioned during an interview with Fangoria magazine that he was interested in producing an anthology series based on Fog. However, the proposed series would at first not have featured any of the characters from Antonio Bay. Instead, the titular Fog itself would have served as a catalyst for other supernatural stories elsewhere. He also implied that as the series progressed, connective ties to his 1980 film would become more apparent. However, the series never materialized, and in 2005 a remake was produced instead. I mean, he's got such interesting ideas. Yeah, I would watch that. I would, like, if that, like, and that is something that I do. Like, I have gone to see all 6 of the Paranormal Activities movies in theaters. The first one was like, seems like might be a fun concept, whatever. When I watched the first one, I was like, I gotta watch every single one. And I think the second one has nothing on the first one. I really don't think the second one is a good movie. But I still watched, and The third one's really good. Maybe not quite on the level of the first one, but still. Fourth one's not good. Fifth one is weird, but I do appreciate how trolly it is. And the sixth one, I know I'm in the minority, I still say it's really good. But if John Carpenter manages to, like, as a producer, maybe not writer or director anymore, but whatever, I do still think the Masters of Horror he directed. I know not all of them were good, but one of the ones he directed, Cigarette Burns, I thought was good. Was good. Anyway, if he, as a producer, like, tried to create a series of movies, either based on The Fog or based on the idea of making Halloween, like, if he called it Halloween Stories instead of Halloween or something, a series of horror stories all about the fog, or all using the fog, or all using Halloween the holiday, I would watch that. I would go to see every single one of them in theaters. Let's see. And I think this is from Wikipedia. After viewing a rough cut of the film, Carpenter was dissatisfied with the results. Recalling the experience, Carpenter commented, "It was terrible. I had a movie that didn't work, and I knew it in my heart." Carpenter subsequently added the prologue with Mr. Machen, Houseman telling ghost stories to fascinate children by a campfire. Houseman played a similar role in the opening of the 1981 film Ghost Story. I would like to see him in other stuff. I don't think I've seen him in anything else, including Ghost Story. Carpenter added several other new scenes and reshot others in order to make the film more comprehensible, more frightening, and gorier. Carpenter and Deborah Hill have said the necessity of a reshoot became especially clear to them after they realized that The Fog would have to compete with horror films that had high gore content. Approximately one-third of the finished film is the newer footage, increasing the film's budget slightly to $1.1 million. One-third is the new footage. Wow. Yeah, that's... Actually, yeah, reading this, that is not actually... That doesn't say that it was too short. I must have been thinking of the first Halloween then. Yeah. Now, and this is still Wikipedia, yeah. Critical response. Despite being a commercial success, the film initially received mixed reviews when it was released. In the years since its release, later reviews were more positive regarding the film. It later came to be considered, as Carpenter opined regarding his creation, a minor horror classic, though he also stated it was not his favorite film due to reshoots and low production values. This is one of the reasons he agreed to the 2005 remake. The review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes reported a 76% approval rating, when the rating was 6.3 based on 55 reviews. The consensus, yeah, I already read that. In his 1980 review, Roger Ebert gave the film 2 out of 4 stars, commenting, "This isn't a great movie, but it does show great promise from Carpenter." In 2002 review for the DVD release of the film, Slant magazine reviewer Ed Gonzalez gave it 3.5 out of 4, stated Carpenter use of 235-1 and more frequent widescreens beyond legendary, and his compositions evoke a town that may as well be the last remaining one on the face of the earth. That's very true. Chris Justice at ClassicHorror.com commented, the music is also classic Carpenter, although the composer actually scrapped his original score and rewrote it to better match the film's vibe. Viewers benefit greatly from his acute sense of rhythm, composition, and tone. His start notes add another layer of complexity to a film that too often is forgotten. The editing is also brilliant. At 89 minutes, the film packs quite a punch and is worth every second. I have to agree. Let's see. And this is... Oh, right. Yeah, IMDb review is what this is. Carpenter brilliantly builds up an unbearable tension through simple methods, like long shots in isolated countryside and a chilling musical score. Not as famous as his Halloween score, but equally effective, I'd have to agree. The bloodshed and images of cold-hearted monsters are kept to a minimum in order to leave it up to your own imagination. And for once this actually works, the detailed sequences in which the town gets surrounded by an inescapable fog is more than horrific enough. Forget about all the overblown big-budget and so-called horrifying films. This little overlooked production scares the hell out of me, the hell out of people since more than 20 years ago, and it'll keep on doing so for yet another very long time. And this person gave it a 10 out of 10. The Fog is one of the very few real scary movies. For some reason, phones that begin ringing on their own and car alarms, that go off without any reason, is still much scarier than a CGI ghost appearing out of a wall. I'd have to read. John Carpenter has always been a master in creating story, creepy scenes with minimal resources but maximum scare. You also like this movie. I recommend Not for Madness to you, criminal underrated masterpiece, also directed by John Carpenter. I still need to get around to watching that. I know. I've just never found a cheap copy, but I do really want to watch it. It looks amazing. I watched the review that Deus Deacon did. You know, it's right up his alley, obviously. You know, yeah. And it looked absolutely amazing, and yeah, I do have to watch it. I mean, I've never heard of a movie that he's directed that I didn't want to see. I'll grant that, you know, 90s and 2000s ones are not as good, but I enjoyed watching the Ghosts of Mars. I do still find stuff in that. I kind of like Big Daddy Mars and the various, yeah. I guess, yeah, I'm not entirely sure if I meant to read the entire thing, but I'll just go ahead. The movie has a good and original creepy story with awesome ghostly figures and gore without any blood. It is notable that this movie had a low budget, which also works perfect for the dark, depressing atmosphere. The movie is quite short, and because of that, the movie feels incomplete. If, like, not all of the events are covered in the story, this is also due to the fact the movie has an open ending, of course, like has. For some reason, because of this incomplete feeling, the movie feels incomplete. I mean, John Carpenter, it's been a while since I said in the video, I think, but John Carpenter's endings, I mean, in the 70s and 80s, John Carpenter knew exactly how to end movies. I'm not sure I've seen a bad ending from him in those 2 decades. You know, yeah, I'm not gonna spoil anything about them. I'm just saying they're amazing. They're absolutely amazing, and just the, you know, this one at the end of this movie, you don't know. Is that it? Are the zombies satisfied now? It wasn't. They took the gold and weren't satisfied. Then they killed the priest. Is that enough? Or are they going to keep attacking? You know, they've killed 6 people. They've killed, you know, presumably it was, okay, my guess would be that they are separate. Like each of the 6 were descendants of a different of the 6 conspirators. It wasn't just 6 people who were descendants. But anyway, that doesn't mean that's enough, you know. And but yeah, like the opening, I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just saying some of the ones I love. I gotta admit, I don't offhand remember what the one in Assault on Precinct 13 is like. I remember some of what's leading up to it, but I don't remember the exact ending. But anyway, the ones I love: Halloween, The Thing, The Fog, Big Trouble in Little China, Prince of Darkness. Holy crap, the one in Prince of Darkness. Like, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor after that. They Live. Love the ending of They Live. So good. Perfect. I wouldn't have changed anything about that ending. guess that's about it. Oh, and I know it's not his best work, but Dark Star, the ending is so good. And I mean, I guess that's what I offhand remember. And Cigarette Burns. Cigarette Burns has an excellent ending. I mean, that's about. I know he's made other movies, but those are the ones that I offhand remember. I mean, there are I haven't watched In the Mouth of Madness, and there's probably others. Excuse me. On the other hand, isn't that about all that he did make in the 70s and 80s? I do like the ending of Ghosts of Mars. I don't remember the ending of his remake of the, what was it called again? Ah, children, something children, with the psychic kids. Excuse me. Let's see. Okay, so back to his review. The movie has some good actors in it. Remember, this movie was made back in the days when it was still okay for well-known actors to appear in horror movies. Present day, only young, unknown actors seem to appear in horror movies. This movie stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Leigh from Psycho, and Hal Holbrook. Not the world's worst actors, if you ask me. It's especially amazing that all of those three are in this one movie, considering the low budget of the movie. I'm afraid I forget his name. Tom Atkins, maybe. I love him in both this and Halloween 3, which I'm also not going to be spoiling here. There it is. Halloween 3. Love that ending. I don't understand how anyone can hate a movie with that amazing of an ending. Like, literally, I think you have to. I don't like just maybe the just I can't really put it into words. I don't understand how anyone can hate a movie with that epic of ending. Like, if I had watched the entire movie and I was like, this is such crap. Oh, BS. Just, I can't stand this. I can't stand this movie. Okay, I'm gonna let it run out and that's it. When the ending arrived, I would have just, again, had to pick my jaw off the floor and I would have been like, that was amazing. It was way better than I really thought it would. Like, just, yeah. The yeah, anyway, which has actually happened once with a movie, but I'm not sure I'm going to talk about which one it is. This movie is perfect in what it tries to achieve. It creates a perfect horror atmosphere with a typical creepy musical score by John Carpenter himself. Has some good creepy moments in it. This is one of the real rare scary movies ever made. The Fog is a unique and original horror movie, and sadly, horror movies like this will never be made again. I wouldn't say never. I do think I haven't watched a lot of them, but I do think these days we are getting some really from what I understand. Oh, he wrote it in 2005. Yeah, I understand. And yeah, it's possible that he had actually watched the remake then, and that was why he was. Yeah, no, in oh god, the 2000s. Oh boy, there were a lot of bad movies then. Maybe especially horror movies. There was a lot of CG, and there was a while there where they thought if we just put CG in the movie, it will be scary. And just, I'm not saying all of them were bad. I feel like I remember I watched the remake, crap, what was it called? The House on Haunted Hill, maybe? I don't think I watched the Haunting remake. I heard that one was terrible, but I think the House on Haunted, it's the one that has Famke Janssen and uh I guess, is that a spoiler? Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. I think it's a remake of a Vincent Price movie, and I feel like did Deacon also review that maybe? But yeah, it really it was pretty good. It wasn't terrible. I remember it as being pretty good, and there are some standouts. I've only watched it once, and I watched it almost 20 years ago, but I remember that movie. I remember some really cool visuals and ideas from that movie, even this long after, and that really is, yeah, that's what you should. That's what a good horror movie should do. A frightening film. This is from Batman 32, 36, 28. So, yeah, uh, you never have too many Batmans. As long as Zack Snyder's not involved. The Fog is an instant horror classic. From the first scene, a salty old sailor tells a group of young children the true story of a ghostly wrecked ship. The scene was so simple yet so thrilling that the viewer is hooked, no pun intended, for the rest of the film. The cast is great, and the music sets the tone just as it did for Halloween. I'd have to agree. The opening, it is so brilliantly done. It is deceptively simple. Like, you might almost think that it's actually, yeah. Come to think of it, no, I totally get. That was one thing that he felt like it wasn't clear enough. Early in the movie, it wasn't clear enough to the audience what this whole ghost. He spent too much of the movie had passed before he really explained it. So he realized he needed to add that scene. No, that makes perfect sense to me. But yeah, it seems so simple, and yet it's incredibly effective. I've seen simple not work, and I've seen much more complex also not work. The best part of the film is that it made no attempt to explain everything away in a hokey horror sense. Why are the bodies returning to life? Things happen simply because they happen, much like, yeah, much like Night of the Living Dead. The character is not concerned with why they are in danger, but more concerned with getting out of danger. I agree, and that is such a great. There are great horror movies where the characters are really focused on why, but these two movies, among others, are such great horror movies in part because the characters are just trying to get out of danger. They're not constantly questioning why is this happening. It feels like that's how you would react in real life. You would try to keep yourself alive. On a side note, John Carpenter has the best endings, thank you, of any filmmaker on the market. Just as Halloween and The Thing both ended. Yeah, I guess Yeah, I'm not gonna. That's kind of a spoiler. Excellent review, dude, but I'm not reading that part aloud. Anyway, yeah, The Fog ends with style and allows the viewer one final scare, a definite hit. And let's see. A first-rate ghost film. And this person I gave it a 9 out of 10. In The Fog, John Carpenter manages to accomplish what few other directors are able to do, create a very chilling, spooky ghost film, a real rarity in Hollywood history. I have fond memories of watching this with my mother for the first time at night and remembering both of us having goosebumps. The movie begins with an old sea captain, played brilliantly by Jim Houseman, telling a group of children around a fire about a ship that crashed into the rocks because they saw strange light in the area. All the men drowned, though their spirits never rested. Instead, they lie in wait for the day when they will take their revenge on those who wronged them. A very effective opening indeed, though it does not end there. All around town, strange things begin to happen. Car horns and lights start going off. Glass is blown apart in local shops, and a strange fog seemingly comes out of nowhere. Beware of this because there's something very powerful in that fog. So many things make this movie what it is. First, the effects are simple but effective. Scenes are shot in a wide pan vision, giving the film a broader look. The fog is so simple, but yet so intimidating at the same time. Then there's the acting. I don't think one could ask for a better cast than what we have here. Tom Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis, Janet Lee Holbrook, to name a few. But perhaps what really makes the movie what it is the fact that everyone loves a good ghost story. And John Carpenter, along with Deborah Hill, managed to give us just that. P.S. Remember to beware of the fog. Why did only 15 out of 19 found that useful. It's a great review. Anyway, let's see. Um, yeah. So let's see. Scary then and still scary now. That's what a lot of people say about this movie. I think it's now let's see. Excuse me. And yeah. So let's see. Yeah, this is one of those movies where I can acknowledge there are things about the movie that could be better, but I find that the positives so greatly outweigh the negatives. Like I said, I stand by giving it a 9 out of 10. Despite, I will admit, the thing about, the cross-cutting having a negative effect and such, I do think that, yeah, and the review I just read aloud helps put words to, excuse me, yeah, why I love it as much and what I love. Anyway, the star of the film, however, is the silvery luminescent fog, a special effect that was eerie 25 years ago and still has that effect. The film only lasts 90 minutes, so the story zips by, the violence is effective but not overdone, and the suspense is terrific. The only annoying aspect of the film is the typically weird theology mumbo-jumbo with another weak priest, hopefully in this case, shown. Hollywood loves showing priests who are pathetic. The rest of the movie is fun to watch. It didn't bother me, but I don't know. To each their own. Let's see. The story takes place in Antonio Bay, a depressingly gloomy but charming seaside town whose inhabitants become the victims of a thick, glowing fog, carrying the angry ghosts of lepers who were killed in a shipwreck a century earlier. What makes this ghost story original, in my opinion, is that the ghosts depicted here are not transparent, floating phantasms that move objects and say boo. They are walking dead guys covered in rags, dripping in salt water, and armed with knives, hooks, swords, and possibly every other sharp metallic object you could think of, and simply slice up their unfortunate victims. Yeah, that is definitely a big part of, yeah. However, it should be stated that the fog is not perfect. Despite a chilling first 20 minutes, the film takes its time building its tension and therefore drags a bit. Even those who love this movie will admit that it's not as effective as Carpenter's Halloween, and under close inspection, plot holes become too apparent. But us fans don't seem to care, since we all know that this film is not intended to be taken too seriously. It's about killer fog, for crying out loud. Anyone approaching this for realism needs to reevaluate their criteria for being a horror movie, since many of these genre films are simply made to entertain and scare the pants off you. And if you're a horror fan like I am, you should find plenty to like here, like combining several different branches of the horror genre using to great effect. The Fog is a combination of such classics as Halloween and Night of the Living Dead. So forget all the CGI stuff for a minute and see what a true horror movie should really be like. Fog is simple yet deeply chilling and atmospheric, followed with Carpenter's ultimate classic, you know what I'm talking about, and double your pleasure. There's a reason why it is a low-budget shocker. It's so beloved by fans of the genre. Recommended. 3.5 out of 5. Let's see. I read I forget, was it the 25 or something, most highly, what's it called? The excuse me, the IMDb reviews, 25 IMDb reviews who had the most votes of useful. Being able to appreciate the craft of John Carpenter back in 1980 certainly helps to avert some harsh criticism thrown its way, because Carpenter has achieved, pound for pound, about a ghost story, a fraction of the budget for big Hollywood genre productions, that have been made since. That's not to say it's perfect, for it's not. Carpenter himself has never been wholly satisfied with the final film, this even after reshooting a third of the film, after originally making a picture reliant on suggestion over presence. But with smoke machines, a synthesizer, a game cast, and a spooky revenge story on the page, he's made a subgenre classic. Excuse me. Now, excuse me. Alright, I did not shave quite as much as I had originally intended. I started to, and then I got away from it, and then I didn't get back to it. No, it's not too bad. Trading on the very hallmarks that made John Carpenter famous before he couldn't buy a hit movie, The Fog is an effective chiller even if it won't scare those accustomed to more gory modern fare. I disagree. There was a long time where I only watched really gory horror movies, and this is still, I still love this movie, you know, after watching all of those, so. And I suppose it's true that, you know, some will be too used to that kind of film to enjoy this. Anyway, quite short and to the point, the film makes good use of the fog to draw tension out of every scene. No one comes to the potential stillness of a smoke machine working overtime behind the scenes. Instead, the tension is consistent, produces a good few jumps and build-ups along the way. The ghosts are kept well hidden so that the limited effects don't undermine them by totally exposing them. Carpenter uses his minimalist electronic score to good effect, playing it low and constant like a heartbeat. Agreed. This next. Today's forecast is foggy with a 90% chance of evil. That's an excellent, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, so. Co-written and directed by John Carpenter, who also has a small uncredited cameo as Bennett during the opening sequence set in the church. I think The Fog is probably his second best film after The Thing, and was Carpenter's first film after Halloween, which was your hit. At heart, it is a simple ghost story, and a terrific ghost story it is as well. Extremely well told, paced, and realized. Fog is deliberately slow to start with, though it never becomes boring. Well, to me it never does, but I suppose if you have a short attention span or are impatient, then The Fog may drag in places for you. The layers of the story build as it reaches its climax, and it's never less than interesting, gripping all the way. The premise of Fog works really well, as I think The Fog in itself is creepy on its own. Fog plays on our fear of the unknown as it surrounds you, and if it's thick enough, your visibility is literally zero. Anything or anyone could be right in front of you, and you wouldn't know it. The characters are given just enough personality, so we care about them, which is essential for a scary film such as The Fog to be a success, and they are pretty likable. The Fog has two main characters who actually never meet on screen, only briefly talk to each other on the phone towards the end as we live through witness their individual experiences with the fog. And this twin perspective worked well. Carpenter's direction and filmmaking technique is excellent in The Fog. His use and placement of both silence and sound is great. He uses plenty of slow pans and establishing shots to really build the atmosphere and tension. Cinematography by Dean Cundey also helps immensely, very simple, yet at the same time very striking. Excuse me. The Fog is also pretty creepy and has some good scares throughout. I particularly like the image of a thick fog outside someone's house, and then suddenly there's a loud banging at the door. Unable to see who it is out of the window, they must open the door, discover who or what is there. The ghosts themselves are really only seen in silhouette, except one shot at the end when one of them is seen to have green, rotten skin riddled with wriggling worms. There isn't much blood or gore, just some quickly cut scenes featuring the ghosts killing people with various hooks and blades. The acting is very good from all involved. Overall, I found The Fog to be a gripping, wonderful, atmospheric, creepy, and highly entertaining way to have spent 85 minutes of my time. I actually prefer The Fog to Halloween. Great horror film that is an absolute must for genre fans and anyone else looking for some classic creepy horror. Highly recommended, although it may be a little slow for some. I'm sure if you put in the effort, you'll be rewarded with a great film. I agree. I can understand liking it better than Halloween. I personally, I mean, to me, Halloween and The Thing just like it's incredible how well made they are, how effective they are, how smart they are. Just yeah, I'm really looking forward to rewatching The Thing. So yeah, I am intending to do more videos on it, even though I tried to already be very comprehensive in going through it, but just amazing. But I can totally understand. I think if you're really into ghost stories, then this is more effective. Then you might like this better than Halloween. I could totally understand that. I think to me part of it is the see, I'm not spoiling Halloween, so it's limited what I can say, but and yeah, in part it's the focus. It's very single-minded of a movie, much like the Terminator, the original Terminator, and it makes for incredibly scary movies when the yeah, and but I can totally understand. Excuse me. Okay, so this person gave it a 10 out of 10 and called it Visual Ghost Story as the one-line summary. The Fog is a gem in movie land, near perfect visual telling, excuse me, of classic style ghost story. I enjoy the fact that there are not overt sexual references, all it is done subtly, which for the time was very rare. Although there is violence, I still will let my kids watch this movie with me. I can understand that, yeah. This might, I mean, this is, well, yeah, oh, give me a second. This is technically an R-rated movie, but if, by today's standards, it's a PG-13. It's one of the only good PG-13 horror movies. Usually for PG-13 horror, it has to be like psychological horror, a la the American Ring remake. Yes, I'm sorry, I haven't watched the original Ringu. I have watched Ringu 2. The original Ringu, never found it on sale. It was never on TV, well, on a channel that I was watching. But I did watch the second one. I can absolutely imagine that the original is better than the American remake, but the American remake is great. And I don't think there is anything in the original that could make me take that back. It may very well be a much better movie, but that doesn't change that the American remake is great. It might have missed something important from the original, which I think Phelas did a really good job of explaining why the American Grudge is a lesser movie than the original, I want to say Japanese Grudge. I've only watched the American. I didn't think it was particularly, it's whatever. It didn't really do much for me. It felt very empty to me of a movie. Anyway, the was that one of the ones where it was the same director? Maybe his heart wasn't in it. I don't know. The yeah, I could totally understand letting kids watch this and The Ring, but most horror movies that are PG-13 are terrible. Now, this movie reminds me of the story by Washington Irving, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The ghost is coming back to take those who happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. The people of Antonio Bay that get killed may not have any link to the ones doing the killing, except Father Malone. Father Malone at least had the honor to stand up for his grandfather's sins and took his punishment, although I think the honest gesture should have been enough. I love a good scare. The remake worries me. I'm not sure you can improve on it. Has Hollywood run out of ideas? I mean, there are about a dozen remakes or movies from TV shows this year. Yeah. Excuse me. Let's see. The Fog is rather tame, besides some bad language. And the scene of Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins discussing her art in bed together For all intents and purposes, it's a study in visual minimalism, yes. A lot of violence and killing is insinuated but happens off screen, which gives it a classic feel missing in more graphic and gory films, yes. It's truly a practice in the school of what you can't see, what you don't see is scarier than what you do. It's a lesson many filmmakers could stand to learn today. This review was written in 2013. I couldn't tell you exactly what year horror movies started getting good again, but yeah, it's possible that it was after that. Like I said, I haven't watched that many of the new ones, but it's just a brief, like, Get Out, Us, right on the tip of my tongue. Give me a second. I realize you don't have. What I'm saying is, don't click away from the video. I'm promising there won't be too much dead air. Babadook, isn't that what it's called? Hereditary. Yeah, I haven't watched these movies, but from what I hear, they are amazing horror movies, and yeah, it really absolutely sounds like they are. Let's see. The Fog is one of those special horror films I hold up as one of the greatest ghost stories of all time. I look at it as an introduction to horror movies and used it as such on my son. It's dear to my heart. My experience seeing it for the first time will stay with me forever. And only 5 out of, yeah, 5 people voted that useful. Yeah. I guess that is it, and yeah, I think I don't think there's much else that I could really get into in this video, so I'm gonna, yeah, because I covered the various criticisms of the cross-cutting, storytelling, not the cross-cutting by itself, but the negative impact of the cross-cutting, the characterization, and the, yeah. Let's see. I guess, yeah, right now I'm really not planning on doing any videos on the 2005 remake. I really don't want to intentionally seek out bad movies anymore. Which is not to say that I'm not planning on talking about any remakes of John Carpenter. If I recall, did I end up finding an inexpensive copy? Yeah, let's see. Maybe I did. Excuse me for just a second. I'm just going to quickly check. I did, in fact, yes. I intend to talk about both versions of Assault on Precinct 13, both the 1976 and the 2005. I do think that there's a lot of good about the latter, and I remember loving the original. So yeah, but yeah, I think it is, for sure, it is not quite as effective as some of his others, and I do think that part of it is, if all of these characters, if all of these events that the different characters experience, if all of them happened to the same 1 or 2 people, it just wouldn't continue to be as, like, how many separate times in this movie does the fog approach a place where a character is, and until the very last part, it's happening to different characters, I mean, excuse me. Yeah, just briefly, it happens to the guys on the trawler. You could keep that in. Anyway, it happens to the trawler, it happens to the weatherman, let's see, and it, yeah, it happens to the let's see, Stevie's house, and then it starts happening to characters that we, you know, to yeah, then it kind of follows Nick and Elizabeth all the way to the church. But yeah, you couldn't have, he would need to fundamentally change, and I don't think the movie would have worked if there had been almost no ghost activity until the very end. That would have been too much, too long passing with too little happening, too little, too late. I mean, yeah, at the end of the day, I think he made the movie about as good as he possibly could, as far as, yeah, the and that sounds like an insult. I love this movie, I really do. I'm not trying to, you know, I'm not being an apologist. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying, I think that is where the story structure issues. It's because at the end of the day, once the fog has gotten all the way to the characters that we care about, and maybe killed some of them, what else? What do you do then? It's an example of a horror movie where you really can't have, like, it's difficult to build. Yeah, and other than that, all you have are these hints. And, like, if this movie had been almost all, like, payphones suddenly going off, that sort of thing, if it had been way more of that and not had all I mean, at the end of the day, there are a number of attacks, you know, in the movie. If all of those had been replaced with stuff we're comfortable with suddenly behaving weirdly, yeah, the movie would have been slow and boring. It he takes what really can't be a long story and stretches it to 90 minutes through the what's it called? Through splitting up the events to several separate characters, so that, yeah, and and that's why it isn't as strong as I don't think that it could have been much better at all. So anyway, let's see. That means the what's the let me think. Uh, Excuse me. I believe I have said everything that I had to say, but yeah, really glad to be watching it and really loving watching Carpenter again. It's been way too long. It really is, like, it's unreal how talented he was in the 70s and 80s. I'm really, really glad to be able to watch the movies and be able to vlog about the movies. And yeah, let's see. The I yeah, I'm not gonna say what's next week because I don't want to risk jinxing it. And I guess, let me think. The I understand why some critics really didn't like it, because if you are critiquing it as just a movie, like, it has to, does it live up to, like, I mean, does it live up to Truffaut and Akira Kurosawa? You know, I'm blanking on what's the Tarkovsky. No, it doesn't. It's not on the level of their masterpieces. And that is, at the end of the day, I really don't. I am never, as much as I love talking about movies, I am never getting a job as a professional critic because it must be so, like, at the end of the day, look, it's their job. They have to compare it to what came before. They have to go into, is this a good movie based on what, film theory says is a good movie? And it's possible that they like something and think, I wouldn't mind if film moved in this direction eventually, but right now it represents a complete, like, it's at this time it's maybe not the right time to go in that direction or something. I feel bad for them having to write something that, yeah, because a lot of people, excuse me, yeah, I don't think that it's necessary for a movie to live up to the masters. Hitchcock would be another example. I don't think that a movie has to live up to the masters. I I think that if you're presenting something that is interesting and you do a good job presenting it, I think that deserves a lot of credit. I have to admit, I don't really understand rating this less than a 7, and I saw that some people did. To each their own. I don't understand it. To me, it's such a great adaptation. Like, that's the thing. It's not, there is, I'm not sure I know of a single ghost story movie that is just like, okay, technically, yeah, this isn't a spoiler. You know, there is a supernatural thing going on in. Uh, there appears to be a supernatural thing going on in The Ring. So why does that movie work? It works in part because it has this mystery, and the movie, over the course of the movie, they work towards trying to solve that mystery. This movie is very specifically not supposed to have a mystery. It's very important that this movie, like, yeah, and that's something I'm really glad it doesn't have a mystery. I would much rather have the movie the way it is now than for Carpenter to try to spin some mystery that, again, I love The Ring. Overall, I do think The Ring, at the end of the day, I can admit this does have some flaws, and I can totally understand being very bothered by those flaws. I'm not bothered by those flaws. The Ring, the American remake of The Ring, I'm not sure it does have any flaws. Oh, wait, yeah. I remember reading someone pointing out that in the Japanese version, seeing, this long dark hair on this, you know, 12-year-old girl, well, to them, that's, yeah, teen girls there have long hair. Where in America, it's like, okay, that's a little weird, that's maybe the one thing. That's maybe the one thing that I could say, that I could call a criticism, that I think makes any sense about that. I've probably heard people just, criticize parts of the movie, and their criticisms just don't make sense to me. It's an incredible mystery. It's very, very scary, and I've watched it many times, and it continues to be incredibly effective to me. No, the what was the point I was making again? The right. I'm not sure that you can tell a simple and straightforward ghost story with no mystery or the like in a much better way than this movie does. I you would have to go bigger or have more, like, yeah. I don't think that this movie could have been better than it is, the way, like, I can completely imagine that the originally, before reshooting an entire third of the movie, I could totally see that Carpenter was disappointed with it and felt, realized it didn't work, but he made it work, even though he still says it's not, he's not completely satisfied with it. I realize there are flaws with it, and it does get it from a 10 out of 10 down to a 9, but it does exactly what, like, it tells the ghost story. It is straightforward, and it does have this thing of, like, I think I could watch this movie 10 times more, and I would still be really, I would still find it tense and suspenseful when we just see the fog, when we hear someone knocking on the door. These sorts of things. It's so well made. And these are, like, this is exact, like, when you watch the movie, you can almost, like, think of how easy it would be to take the different scenes of this movie and, yeah, retell them around a campfire. The weatherman, and the weatherman heard the, the warning, but he figured she must take some kind of, something to help deal with all the hours. And so he put down the phone, and despite Stevie's warnings not to do so, he walked over to the door and opened it and was killed. It's just, the movie is one long ghost story. You could, if someone did, like, turn this entire movie into 90 minutes of retelling it, and, like, I don't know, that, yeah, like, virtual reality kind of thing. You put on the goggles, and then you see the fire in front of you, and you see the guy, and in 90 minutes he retells the entire movie exactly as it is. It would work. I would pay for that. It would still be incredibly effective. And that's the thing that just isn't, like, I don't know any other movie that does that. And honestly, even if there were, maybe there are 10, maybe there's 100. There are a lot of movies I haven't watched. No matter how good those are, I would still love this. It's so effective. It gets the stuff that Carpenter especially wanted to. I feel, I can't read his mind. I don't know. Maybe there's stuff he feels like he didn't quite nail, but so much of it just, yeah. I am really glad that he did go back and reshoot, rather than having to release, a movie he really felt did not work, and, it could really negatively affect his career. But no, I really admire his restraint, because 1980, this was the year that saw movies such as the original Friday the 13th, which, by today's standards, is not that bloody or gory or violent. But compared to something like the first Halloween movie, it's worlds apart. A lot more gore, blood, and violence. And, yeah, like, this has so much less than a movie like that. And, like, oof, let's see, what else? 1980. Yeah, I'm not sure what exactly what else. But anyway, the yeah, it's incredibly impressive how well the movie works. And I think, excuse me, I think the writing, the I think maybe the character stuff could have been better, like others have said, but I don't think the story structure could have been much different to, if, for the movie to still have the effect that it does and that it was meant to, and yeah, the yeah, it's incredibly impressive. I am really, really glad that he kept me. Excuse me. I'm very sorry that he did become disillusioned with Hollywood after making Big Trouble in Little China because of its reception. He understood it. He really had something there, and people just didn't get it, and it's really frustrating. In general, like, he made movies that, like, apparently The Thing wasn't well received, and it's like, well, I mean, we just had a movie like E.T., so aliens are supposed to be nice and cute now. Are you freaking kidding me? Focus. Focus on something other than how much you hate that E.T. ruined The Thing for people. Big Trouble in Little China. I'm really sorry that he became disillusioned, and I'm afraid it does show in the movies, in at least some of the movies he's made since, that he became disillusioned. But I'm really glad that we got, I guess, a good 10 years of him making incredible movies. And occasionally movies that were, could have been better. But, like, yeah, from like 76, was it really 86? Was it really? Oh, wait, sorry. No, wait. He wasn't fully disillusioned. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that the Prince of, sorry, not the movie Prince of Darkness. I'm fairly certain he put that he made, that came out in like 87. That is not the work of a man disillusioned. No, no, it must have been after that also, or maybe, yeah, whatever. Anyway, from mid to late 70s to near the end of the 80s, he did incredible work, and I'm really glad that he managed to make all those movies before simply becoming disillusioned. It really is like the what's the word? And I maintain the episode Cigarette Burns shows that even by then, and what was that, like 2008 or 9 or something like that, he still had talent. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I guess I should just briefly say, just, please don't flood the comment section with questions about Masters of Horror. A friend of mine, Peter, how does he pronounce it in English? Peter Roeder. I think I'm gonna link his channel in the description box. I asked him. He had watched Masters of Horror, and he was like, a lot of the episodes really aren't that amazing, but you should watch Cigarette Burns and Deer Woman. So I watched those two, and I do also think Deer Woman is a lot. Like, it has some great qualities, which, it really sucks that apparently, I want to say, is it Max? Crap. He's the son of the director of Blues Brothers, and that, I'm sorry, I always mix them up. Is it An American Werewolf in London? Is that the one? Because there's also something about in Paris. I watched both of them. I know one of them is like the classic, and the other's like, but I just don't remember which is which. I'm sorry, but that director's son helped make A Dear Woman, and he's apparently kind of problematic, so that really sucks. But yeah, so I watched Cigarette Burns, and I absolutely love it, and I showed it to friends of mine who also love John Carpenter. Like, you know, I've shared everything that I've seen by Carmen, which is, yeah, I'm probably did show this to some of my friends, and thus watched it a couple times. But anyway, yeah, the let's see, what was, yeah. So anyway, yeah. If you post a bunch of questions about Masters of Horror, I'm sorry, I've only watched those 2 episodes. You know, and apparently, yeah, apparently John Carpenter did direct one more episode called like Pro Life or something, but I've heard it's bad, so I didn't watch it. But yeah, you know, at the mall some years ago, they sold individual episodes of the show. So I bought just those two. I have not watched any of the others, even though I do like some of the work of some of the other directors. I feel like Joe Dante did one. I've liked some of this stuff quite a bit. So anyway, yeah, Argento. I feel like he did one, and I've quite enjoyed some of his stuff. Yeah, overall I'm not sure he's really my, yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not that much for me. But he did make a couple of movies that I thought were really good. Didn't he make Do You Like Hitchcock? I think it's called. I remember enjoying that a lot. But yeah. Anyway, so the let's see. Yeah, I let's see. If he genuinely feels excited to make another movie, I'd pay to watch it, you know. But I completely understand if he simply he's had too many bad experiences. Like by the end of the 80s, I mean, just look at what they did. Like, you know, what's that thing? You know, golf. Like, yeah, if I did memes, this is where, like, you know, you look at, like, when John Carpenter looked at the state of the Halloween movie series, you know, yeah, before the oh, actually, never mind. Actually, that was near the end of the 80s and then into the 90s. But yeah, by the end of the 80s, I could imagine John Carpenter look at the Halloween series and be like, look how they massacred my boy. That's a terrible. I cannot impersonate. I'm not any good at impersonating Brando. Now the let's see. I completely understand if he simply doesn't want to. I would really like it if he kept working on video games, because I think he did a really good job on Fear 3. And while the Thing video game is not all that great, there are glimpses of real inspiration there. And I mean, he and the game developers were like, we love working together. We gotta do, you know, like, they loved working together so much that they ended up designing a character in his likeness, which he apparently voices as well. And then, like, apparently he didn't get credit for the voice because of some kind of like SAG rule or whatever. But I mean, he really enjoys working on these games. And yeah, Fear 3, I think I gave it a very negative review when I first watched. Sorry, when I first played it. But in my defense, that was almost 10 years ago by now, and I've played all of the, you know, all 3 games, and let's see, what are there, like 3 expansion packs, right? Like 2 for the first one, 1 for the second one. I've only played the expansion pack for the second one once, but I intend to play it more. And yeah, all the other ones I've played multiple times, and I would say that all of them do have some issues, but overall, honestly, the third one is probably the one that gets, yeah, what's the word? It gets closest to what the really, yeah, you know, there were some things I criticized about it where I now realize, well, those were stylistic choices, and while back then I didn't think they were good ideas, now I've come to realize they actually work fairly well, you know. So yeah, I'm not. It's possible I'll do more videos on those games, but it'll be a while, and yeah, it'll probably be a while. So don't hold your breath. You'll turn blue. And yeah, let's see. Yeah, I'm really grateful that we got so many great movies from Carpenter before he quit, and I hope he keeps working on, like, you know what would be amazing if he worked with frictional games. You know, the guys behind Pen, Penumbra, Amnesia, and Soma. You guys gotta get better at picking titles. I'm sorry, nope. Like, it's beside the point. They are great at making games, and he's great at helping shape really effective horror games. Like, that's one thing I will say about the Thing video game. It is scary. It is legitimately, like, there are things in that game that are effective and scary, where really, if you think about it, it really should come across as, yeah, it shouldn't work as well as it does. And yeah, anyway, I believe I've said everything. See, this is, I always try to make sure I don't want to remember something like 5 minutes after I start, you know, putting, after I turn off the camera and stuff, start putting things away. You know, I want it to be just the one video. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Yeah, I'm also really glad to see, you know, yeah, Nancy Kyes and Jamie Lee Curtis, you know, yeah, they must have enjoyed working with Carpenter to come back after Halloween to make this. And yeah, the let's see. And yeah, and Tom Atkins must have, you know, he's John Carpenter didn't direct Halloween 3, but Tom Atkins did sign on to John Carpenter's script. I'm pretty sure John Carpenter wrote that. Was the Was he the sole writer or the main writer? Something like that. So, you know, it's possible that he was like, I gotta work with this director guy who no one has ever heard of. Like, I'm not sure he directed a single thing before. It's incredible how well that movie came out, considering that it's the first time he directed, like, a movie, apparently, at least. Or did he just do, like, really small stuff? I forget. Did he stop directing after that? I really feel bad for that. That movie did not get the reception it deserved. It's seriously, like, come on, people. No, Michael Myers is not in Halloween 3. I know that internet wasn't a thing back then, but, like, was it really that confusing and surprising to people? It's called Season of the Witch. Did that make you think Michael Myers? Anyway, yeah. So the I believe that I have gone into absolutely everything that I really wanted to make sure to cover, and I, let's see. Yeah, I'm glad that I went over the various criticisms, because it is legit. It is true that the cross-cutting does hinder the building of suspense in the individual scenes, and the characters are neither given, like, really strong, like, They're establishing, the very first time we see them, they don't make that strong impression, and they don't get a lot of character development either. And it really, like, that is otherwise something that John Carpenter is really great at, both of those traits. Yeah, I I'm not gonna lie, I would, if he, excuse me, if like he had an idea, maybe by today he doesn't want to put that much, I mean, the man is, he is basically an old man by now. I completely understand if he doesn't want to go for, even if he takes his time and paces himself, if he doesn't want to write an entire screenplay again. But maybe if he like came up with some of the concepts, and then maybe like his son, I don't know if his son does he have more than one? I forget. I don't know if any of his sons, any son of his, I think it works both for singular and plural, write screenplays. I know that at least one of them works on music. But if they were so inclined and he had some ideas, I would be interested in, like, them making a script that is, where the story structure is less, actually, I don't know the word to use it, where it's more straightforward, and maybe we only follow a few characters and see if he could make that work. If he thinks he has a good idea for that, I would like to see that. And like, if they finished a script like that, I would definitely say you could find a great, horror director today who could take a John Carpenter script and do it justice. Make as great a movie as, you know. Honestly, if I found out tomorrow that Tommy Lee Wallace, even, like, let's hypothetically say, let's say he never directed anything other than Halloween 3. Let's say he came out of retirement to direct Carpenter's script. I would pay to watch it. I will watch it in theaters, I guarantee you. The I mean, uh, was it one person, or was it two guys? The Yeah, let me think. I think two guys wrote Halloween 2018, and one of those two guys also directed it. If that guy directed a John Carpenter script, yeah, I would. Yeah, and I am so psyched. I am so stoked that, yeah, they have confirmed they are making. Let me think. Halloween, was it Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends or something? I'm sorry, I forget. But I cannot wait. And Jamie Lee Curtis is confirmed. I can't wait. Cannot wait. Like, seriously. So excited to see what they do with that. I have, there's apparently, like, some talk about, maybe they would try to make a remake or sequel to Big Trouble in Little China. I might talk about that some in the video I do for that movie, but I'm not going to start talking about it here. If I talk about that, I want to be able to spoil the movie, and I don't want to spoil that movie in this video. There's no good reason for that. So, yeah, if I do that, probably near the end of that video. I guess, yeah, that is absolutely everything that I wanted to say. So, I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I'll catch you next time.